Chapter 1518. The tragic scene in the main hall caused the audience to fall into a deathly silence. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at Nietian, their faces filled with shock and horror. They were not shocked by Nietian's strength, but by the fact that Nietian actually killed Jiangqi. Jiangqi was not only a direct descendant of the Jiang family, but he also had a Holy Assembly elder grandfather. These two identities added together were extremely terrifying. Nietian killing Jiangqi was equivalent to poking two giant hornets' nests at the same time. However, Nietian didn't care about this at all. His face was indifferent. But when he saw a sparkling and translucent godhead floating in the air, his face changed, exclaiming, "What is this?" He knew that this sparkling and translucent ball of light was Jiangqi's godhead, but this godhead was different from other people's. It didn't release the pure aura of divine power. Instead, it was rich dragon qi. The sparkling and translucent ball of light floated in the air, spinning rapidly, constantly releasing waves of pure dragon qi. It was very strange. Nietian's divine sense probed and found that there was not a trace of consciousness in the godhead. Jiangqi was completely dead. He was very puzzled. With his strength, it was not enough to directly erase the divine sense in a godhead. So why was there no divine sense in Jiangqi's godhead? Only the purest dragon qi? Nietian's brows wrinkled tightly, his face filled with astonishment. Could it be that Jiangqi's godhead is also a special godhead? Nietian guessed in his heart. He reached out slightly, directly taking the sparkling and translucent ball of light. The moment his hand touched it, Nietian felt an incomparably pure dragon qi flowing into his body, instantly restoring the dragon qi he had consumed. What a terrifying power! The sudden scene caught Nietian unprepared. His eyes trembled as he exclaimed in shock. This sparkling and translucent ball of light was too terrifying. It could actually instantly replenish dragon qi. Could this be the legendary dragon vein crystal core? Indra's voice suddenly sounding very surprised. Dragon vein crystal core? Nietian was stunned for a moment, not knowing what Indra was talking about. The dragon vein crystal essence is a godhead unique to the dragon clan. It's also known as the dragon essence, and it contains the purest dragon qi. Tian gave a simple explanation and said with a puzzled expression, "How can a human warrior have dragon vein crystal essence?" The dragon vein crystal essence was unique to the dragon clan. Even if Jiangqi had an innate dragon vein, it was impossible for him to nurture the dragon vein crystal essence. Sakura thought hard, but he couldn't figure out what was going on. Chia, right at this moment, Jiang Yulong seemed as if he'd awoken from a dream, and he suddenly let out a strange cry. He was extremely sorrowful, and he looked at Nietian with a shocked expression as he cried out loudly, "Little bastard, you killed him." Nietian put away the dragon vein crystal yuan and looked cold at Jiang Yulong. He said directly, "Stop acting. You clearly had the chance to save him just now, but you coldly watched from the sidelines. Didn't you want Jiangqi to die by my hands? It's hard for him to still call you second uncle, but you're a cruel and unscrupulous person, even scheming against your own nephew." How could Nietian not see through that if Jiang Yulong wanted to save Jiangqi just now, he could stop him casually? But Jiang Yulong was indifferent and watched Jiangqi die in Nietian's hands helplessly. He even hoped that Jiangqi would die in Nietian's hands. Jiangqi even called him second uncle just now. This kind of second uncle was simply worse than pigs and dogs. Jiang Yulong's gaze sank slightly. He did not think that Nietian was so astute, seeing through everything. But he was very puzzled. Since Nietian already saw through it, why did he still kill Jiangqi? If Nietian could see through everything, how could the others possibly not see through? At this time, everyone's eyes when looking at Jiang Yulong changed. Even Jiang Baoyu, this Jiang family member, had a look of contempt. He did not think that Jiang Yulong was so ruthless, even scheming against his own people. Little B****, you killed my nephew. I want you to pay with your life. Jiang Yulong did not care about the others' reactions. He roared and took a step forward. His whole body's aura surged out and pressed down on Nye Tian. In an instant, Nye Tian felt a violent force pressing down on him, making it hard for him to breathe. Jiang Yulong's strength was very strong, even more terrifying than the heartbroken young master. Nye Tian. Mo Rushi and the others cried out when they saw Nye Tian being controlled, but they were powerless to do anything. The heartbroken young master's Yuan meridians were injured, so he could not attack. Cher had the 3 lives meridians, so she was not affected by the demonic power. But her strength was too weak, so it was difficult for her to even get close to Jiang Yulong. What a ruthless second uncle. Didn't he make me kill Jiang Qi so that he would have a reason to kill me? Nye Tian endured the intense pain. His facial features were already distorted, and he looked like he was in extreme pain. Jiang Yulong watched Jiang Qi die tragically just to give him a reason to kill Nye Tian. This second uncle was really ruthless. Little B asterisk starred. Pay with your life. Jiang Yulong's eyes were gloomy as he spoke coldly. His eyes released a cold intent. He wanted to use his aura to pressure Nye Tian to death, but he discovered that Nye Tian's martial body was extremely tough. Even if he released his full strength, he still could not kill Nye Tian. Jiang Yulong could not imagine how a mere inferior god's martial body could be so tough. When he was a peak over god, he could instantly kill a peak intermediate god if he released all his aura. Even a weaker superior god would not be able to withstand it. Little did he know that there were too many heaven-defying things in Nye Tian's body. That was why his martial body could not be compared to ordinary cultivators. The supreme dragon vein, the star origin stone, the supreme twin flames, the demon and god origin embryo, and the glazed demon pagoda. Any one of these things could improve a cultivator's martial body qualitatively. These 5 heaven-defying things were added to Nye Tian's body, allowing him to possess a martial body that was far superior to ordinary cultivators. Jiang Yulong, you're a senior cultivator who has been famous for a long time. Don't you feel ashamed to attack a junior in public? The heartbroken prince was enraged. His Yuan meridians moved, and he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. You Jiuxiao, this brat killed my nephew. As his second uncle, I shall take revenge for my nephew. What's wrong with that? Jiang Yulong laughed coldly. After that, he raised his palm, intending to make a move. The heartbroken prince's eyes trembled violently. He could not help but look around, hoping that the secret guards of the Holy Assembly would help. Unfortunately, the surroundings were silent. There was no movement at all. Jiang Qi was dead. This matter had already become a big deal. Why would the secret guards get involved in this? Little brat die. Jiang Yulong raised his hand. Without any hesitation, he directly struck with his palm. Rolling palm, force gushed out, forceful and murderous. It pressed down on Nye Tian crazily. Jiang Yulong was an expert at the peak of the overgod level. He was 3 cultivation levels higher than Nye Tian. Nye Tian would definitely die if the palm fell. No! Mo Rushi, Cher, and the others screamed when they saw the situation. Their faces were filled with extreme fear. However, Jiang Yulong's palm fell mercilessly. At the moment of life and death, something unexpected happened. The people of a Jiang family are still so shameless. Just when Jiang Yulong's palm was about to fall, a vigorous voice suddenly sounded. Then a figure descended. Violent aura was released from his body, blocking the fatal attack for Nye Tian. In the next moment, the figure landed in front of Nye Tian like a towering mountain. Chapter 1519. In the Great Hall, just as Nye Tian was about to die, an azure-clothed figure suddenly descended and blocked Jiang Yulong's fatal palm strike for him. Nye Tian couldn't help but tremble when he saw who it was. The newcomer looked to be in his 30s, and his aura was like a mountain. He stood there majestically, like the toughest iron wall. This person's appearance and back made Nye Tian recall something. A blurry figure appeared in his mind, but he couldn't see the face clearly. Who is this person? Why do I see a similar figure on him? Nye Tian frowned, puzzled. Lady Fei Yu. At this time, Nie Wuxiang recognized Nie Feiyu and cried out in surprise. She was pleasantly surprised. He was a member of the Nie family, so of course he knew Nie Feiyu. Nie Feiyu was one of the 12 Hall Masters of the Wind and Cloud Alliance. He was also the sixth son of the Wind and Cloud Alliance's leader, Nie Dao. His position in the Wind and Cloud Alliance was extremely high. His appearance here was inexplicable. Nie Feiyu has also come. Could he have also come for Nie Tian? Young Master Heartbroken also knew Nie Feiyu. This person was a legendary figure in the God-forbidding domain. He ranked first on the 9 regions over God ranking and was known as the strongest chief god. He was in existence invincible below the supreme God realm. Most terrifyingly, Nie Feiyu was not even 10,000 years old. This was an extremely young age for an overgod. Many people in the 9 realms were certain that Nie Feiyu would become the next Nie Fenghua, a legend who had stepped into the paramount god realm before the age of 10,000. In the endless history of the 9 major realms, there were only a handful of people who had reached the highest realm before the age of 10,000. Nie Fenghua was one of them. Now, Nie Feiyu also had high hopes of becoming a legend. It was rare for 2 legendary-level figures to appear in the Wind and Cloud Alliance at the same time. If nothing had happened to Nie Fenghua back then, the Wind and Cloud Alliance might have become the strongest existence in the 9 realms in a few hundred or even a few thousand years. One had to know that Nie Fenghua alone had allowed the Wind and Rain Alliance to surpass the Holy Parliament and the Xingtian Alliance. After Nie Fenghua's incident, the Wind and Cloud Alliance had restrained themselves quite a bit, but they were still a colossal existence. It was very strange for someone of Nie Feiyu's status to suddenly appear in the God-shepherding domain. Nie Feiyu, I didn't expect you to appear here. Jiang Yulong frowned slightly and suddenly looked at Nie Tian. He seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes became strange. Nie Feiyu's eyes darkened. He suddenly glanced at Nie Tian behind him, his eyes fiercely trembling. It seemed that he wanted to say something, but in the end, he held himself back. The Wind and Cloud Alliance Master had told him not to look for Nie Tian, but he couldn't hold himself back and came here. The moment he saw Nie Tian, he was convinced that Nie Tian was the son of his elder brother, Nie Fenghua. However, he did not dare to acknowledge Nie Tian. If he acknowledged Nie Tian now, it would be the same as announcing to the people of the 9 realms that Nie Tian was the fiend god nascent embryo. That would only put Nie Tian in more danger. At this time, the upper echelons of the Holy Parliament might already know of Nie Tian's existence. However, before they made a move, how could Nie Feiyu take the initiative to expose Nie Tian's identity? I came to look for Nie Wuxiang. Is there a problem? Nie Feiyu finally resisted the impulse in his heart. He looked at Jiang Yulong with a murderous gaze and spoke coldly. He did not know what grudges there were between Jiang Yulong and Nie Tian, but he clearly saw that Jiang Yulong had wanted to kill Nie Tian just now. If he had come a moment later, Nie Tian would probably already be dead. Jiang Yulong sneered and laughed sinisterly. Since you came to look for Nie Wuxiang, he is here. You can leave. How could he not see that Nie Feiyu had obviously come for Nie Tian? Coming to look for Nie Wuxiang was clearly a cover. At this moment, Jiang Yulong had a different idea. He originally only knew that Nie Tian possessed the supreme dragon vein, but he did not expect that Nie Tian would be able to draw out a big shot like Nie Feiyu. Could Nie Tian be a child of the Nie clan? Looking at Nie Feiyu's attitude toward Nie Tian and his love for Nie Tian, Jiang Yulong became very curious about Nie Tian's real identity. A low god Nie Tian was actually able to attract Nie Feiyu to come in person. It seems that Nie Tian is not an ordinary child of the Nie clan. Jiang Yulong sneered inwardly. The gaze he looked at Nie Tian became even more strange. Jiang Yulong, when I leave is none of your business, Nie Feiyu replied, coldly with a stern face. The corner of Jiang Yulong's mouth twitched. His eyes couldn't help but darken. He immediately said, I don't care if you want to stay here, but please don't interfere in my business. With that, Jiang Yulong suddenly looked at Nie Tian and took a step forward. He actually wanted to make another move. Jiang Yulong, you are a mighty peak over God. Don't you feel ashamed to attack a junior in public? Nie Feiyu's body trembled slightly. He directly broke through Jiang Yulong's aura and spoke coldly. With him here, how could he let Jiang Yulong injure Nie Tian? Jiang Yulong's eyes narrowed slightly, and his lips curled into a strange smile. He said directly, Nie Feiyu, looks like you really did come for Nie Tian. This kid can't be your illegitimate child, right? Jiang Yulong said this completely jokingly. With Nie Feiyu's status, there was no need for him to have illegitimate children. He could marry as many women as he wanted, and he could have as many sons as he wanted. Moreover, everyone in the Nine Realms knew that Nie Feiyu was a martial arts fanatic. He was completely obsessed with the martial way and had no interest in women. However, Jiang Yulong's joking words were not far off. Nie Tian was not Nie Feiyu's son, but Nie Feiyu's nephew. You're full of shit. You're courting death. Nie Feiyu's eyes darkened, and he suddenly took a step forward. An enormous aura was released from his body, and it actually forced Jiang Yulong to retreat again and again. The entire conference hall also began to sway. The conference hall could withstand the attacks of overgods, but Nie Feiyu was known as the strongest overgod. His true battle prowess was even greater than that of an ordinary early-stage paramount god. Jiang Yulong frowned. He wanted to resist, but that aura completely suppressed him, causing him to involuntarily retreat. Slap! Just as Jiang Yulong was continuously retreating, a sharp force suddenly descended and landed directly on his face. The crisp sound of a slap resounded throughout the hall, appearing extremely clear and bright. Jiang Yulong's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he felt his face swell and heat up. He directly roared, Nie Feiyu, you're going too far. He had never imagined that Nie Feiyu would actually dare to slap him in front of everyone. Although the redness on his face disappeared immediately, that crisp sound was like a steel needle, piercing Jiang Yulong's heart. He was a mighty peak over god, but he had actually been slapped in front of everyone. How could he endure this kind of humiliation? The others were also stunned for a moment, looking at Nie Feiyu with astonished expressions, completely incredulous. Nie Feiyu's tyranny had exceeded everyone's expectations. Jiang Yulong, Jiang Lai didn't educate you well, so I'll help him educate you. This slap is to let you clearly see yourself. There are some people you can't touch. Nie Feiyu said coldly, his eyes filled with extreme anger. Jiang Yulong wanted to kill Nie Tian, so he naturally had to intimidate the former. If not for Jiang Yulong's special status, he would definitely have killed him. Chapter 1520. Jiang Lai. This name was not unfamiliar to Nie Tian. When the Sword Elder left, he had mentioned this name to Nie Tian. This person was the realm master of the God Sealing region, and also the Sword Elder's mortal enemy. It was this person who had imprisoned the Sword Elder and refined his soul into the artifact spirit of the Ink Jade Dragon Sword. How could Nie Tian not be surprised when Nie Feiyu mentioned the name Jiang Lai again? From Nie Feiyu's words, Jiang Lai seemed to be Jiang Yulong's father or some other elder. However, he did not know if the Realm Master Jiang Lai mentioned by the Sword Elder and the Jiang Lai mentioned by Nie Feiyu were the same person. Nie Feiyu, how dare you? Hearing Nie Feiyu mention the name Jiang Lai, Jiang Yulong was instantly enraged. He growled, My father's name is not something you can casually say. As his roar rang out, Jiang Yulong slammed out with his palm. A massive palm force roared out like a tsunami, sweeping up the ground of the Parliament Hall. Countless stone pillars were instantly crushed into smithereens, and a loud bang rang out in the Parliament Hall. Even with the support of the Grand Defensive Formation, it was still unable to withstand the impact, and one side of the Parliament Hall collapsed. Jiang Lai was Jiang Yulong's father, and, at the same time, the Alliance Master of the Xingtian Alliance. In the 9 major realms, he was a supreme existence on par with the Alliance Master and the Sacred Guild leader. Oh no! Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts tightened, their eyes filled with fear, and they all retreated. At that moment, the shadow guards hiding in the dark finally could not hold it in any longer. Over 10 figures in black robes appeared and unleashed their auras, forming a gigantic barrier that forcibly supported the collapsing Parliament Hall. Jiang Yulong, if you want to fight, then I will fight with you. Niefeyu's sword-like eyebrows furrowed, and with a wild laugh, his figure flashed. Like a hurricane, he directly swept everyone out of the conference hall. Bastard! Jiang Yulong roared, his figure flickering as he appeared outside the conference hall. His figure rushed out of the hall, and without waiting for Niefeyu to stabilize himself, he suddenly struck out with his palm, blasting towards Nietian. With me here, don't even think of harming a hair on him. When Niefeyu saw this, he roared and similarly struck out with his palm. Two huge palm shadows collided in the void, causing a deafening explosion. The ground within a radius of several thousand meters was swept up, and the square outside the Parliament Hall was instantly turned into ruins. The collision between two peak overgods possessed unimaginable power. Niefeyu casually waved his hand, and a white light appeared, directly sending Nietian and the others into the distant sky. At the same time, his figure moved, leaping tens of thousands of meters into the sky. Jiang Yulong, if you have the guts, then come up and fight me. Niefeyu laughed coldly, his eyes looking down on Jiang Yulong, extremely arrogant. However, Jiang Yulong sneered. His figure moved, and like a stream of light, he actually charged towards Nietian. He knew that he was no match for Jiang Yulong, so he targeted Nietian. Despicable! Niefeyu frowned and struck out with his palm forcefully. A golden light appeared, filling half the sky. It was like a golden mountain, blocking Jiang Yulong's path. Jiang Yulong was blocked. He looked at Niefeyu viciously and roared Niefeyu coldly. Niefeyu, just what is your relationship with this kid? Why are you protecting him like this? I have nothing to do with him. I just can't stand your shamelessness. Niefeyu sneered and said loudly, Jiang Yulong, I'll give you a chance. If you can take a palm strike from me, I'll no longer protect Nietian. How about it? With that, Niefeyu's figure moved, and he arrived before Jiang Yulong. Cold disdain filled his eyes. A palm strike? Jiang Yulong's eyes flickered, and his lips curled into a vicious smile. He growled, Niefeyu, you're far too arrogant. Niefeyu and Jiang Yulong were both peak overgods. The former ranked first on the overgod ranking of the 9 regions and was known as the strongest overgod. However, Jiang Yulong was also ranked 5th on the overgod ranking. He refused to believe that he could not even take a palm strike from Niefeyu with his strength. When the others heard Niefeyu's words, they all frowned and expressed their doubts. Niefeyu's strength was indeed above Jiang Yulong's, but it was a little too much to say that he could defeat Jiang Yulong with a single palm strike. The two of them had clashed just now. Although Niefeyu had the upper hand, it was not an overwhelming advantage. Nietian's eyes narrowed slightly. As he looked at Niefeyu in the distance, he actually sensed a very familiar aura. This aura was extremely similar to his demonic origin embryo, but it lacked the dark chi of the demonic and divine powers. Soul-sealing embryo. In the next moment, Nietian immediately understood. Niefeyu was the soul-sealing embryo. The demonic origin embryo was formed from the fusion of the soul-sealing embryo and the extreme demon embryo. Nietian was extremely familiar with the aura of the soul-sealing embryo. Since Niefeyu was bold enough to defeat Jiang Yulong with a single palm strike, he believed that he had enough strength. Nietian really wanted to see just how terrifying the legendary soul-sealing embryo was. Niefeyu, you and I are both peak overgods. You say that I can't take a palm strike from you? You're too arrogant. I'd like to see just how you're going to defeat me with a single palm strike. Jiang Yulong sneered, and a berserk aura spread out from his body. Like surging waves of air, the aura quickly condensed into a huge armored giant around him. It was over 10,000 meters tall and stood in the sky like the ruler of the world. What a terrifying aura! Nietian could not help but shudder when he sensed the armored giant's aura. With his strength, he still felt an almost suffocating pressure even when he was several tens of thousands of meters away. A peak overgod was indeed terrifying. Nie Tian estimated that with Jiang Yulong's strength, a single palm strike from the armored giant was enough to destroy an entire mountain range. That's the heaven-punishing armor. To the side, Jiang Baoyu could not help but cry out when she saw the armored giant in the sky. She said loudly, "I never thought that Lord Yulong would actually be able to cultivate the heaven-punishing armor." The most terrifying aspect of the Jiang family of heaven-punishing was the heaven-punishing bloodline within them. This was one of the four supreme ancient bloodlines. When the power of the bloodline was released to the limit, the martial body could transform into the body of a heaven-punishing war god. Although Jiang Yulong's heaven-punishing armor was only an image, it was still extremely terrifying. The heaven-punishing bloodline of the Jiang family is just so. In the sky, Nie Feiyu looked at Jiang Yulong and sneered. His eyes were filled with disdain. How arrogant! Sensing Nie Feiyu's disdain, Jiang Yulong was immediately enraged. With a deep roar, his body moved, and the heaven-punishing armor's giant hand fell down. It swept up the scattered clouds in the surroundings and rolled down. In an instant, the heavens and earth wailed, and the weather changed. It was like the end of the world. The countless people gathered below felt the destructive aura. Their gazes trembled violently as they were extremely shocked. In the sky, Nie Feiyu faced Jiang Yulong's full-powered attack, but he remained like a mountain. He stood in the air, and the energy channels in his body revolved madly. Violent auras were released, and a terrifying power surged in his body like the roar of a wild beast. Chapter 15:21. In the sky, Nie Feiyu struck out with his palm. The golden vortex turned into a streak of golden light that shot towards Jiang Yulong like a huge, sky-splitting sword. The moment the streak of golden light shot out, the space there trembled slightly. The world seemed to have been forcefully torn apart, producing a strange wail. What terrifying power! Nie Tian could not help but shudder when he saw this. He could not imagine that the power of a cultivator could actually reach such a terrifying level. The power of a peak over god was something he could not comprehend right now. The streak of golden light seemed to contain an extremely strange power that could fend off the world. How terrifying! At this moment, the heartbroken breaker and the others frowned as well. They were shocked. They were also overgods, so they could obviously see how terrifying Nie Feiyu was. It was very difficult to imagine that such terrifying power actually came from the hands of an overgod. Only now did the heartbroken breaker and the others understand how terrifying Nie Feiyu was. He definitely did not live up to his reputation as the strongest overgod. Boom! Crack! In the void, the golden light that was thousands of meters in size suddenly descended, landing on the Xingtian armor. The 10,000-meter-tall armor trembled slightly, and its gigantic figure suddenly swayed. After that, a loud cracking sound rang out, and a huge crack appeared on the Xingtian armor. In an instant, the crack spread out like a spider web and directly exploded. Bang! In the next moment, there was a great rumble in the sky, and the heaven-punishing armor directly shattered. Arg! Jiang Yulong howled miserably, and his figure flew backwards. Like a kite with its string cut, he fell towards the ground extremely quickly. He left behind a bloody trail in the air, horrifying and eye-catching. Bang! Jiang Yulong smashed into the ground, and a huge crater appeared. Rocks flew everywhere, and the earth surged. One move, just one move, and Nie Feiyu had directly defeated Jiang Yulong. Can't even withstand a single blow. Nie Feiyu stood in the sky and smiled coldly. As it turned out, he was the absolute ruler of this region of the sky. "Hu, why are you so powerful?" Jiang Yulong stood up, his entire body dripping with blood. He struggled to raise his head to look at Nie Feiyu, his eyes filled with terror and shock. He had the same strength as Nie Feiyu, and he had condensed his strongest offensive move, the Xingtian armor, but he still couldn't block a single move from Nie Feiyu. This was unacceptable to him. He had originally thought that even if he couldn't injure Nie Feiyu with the heaven-punishing armor, he would have no problem protecting himself. But the result was completely different from what he had expected. Niefeyu's battle prowess far exceeded his expectations. It was not something he could contend with at all. What a scary person. When everyone on the ground saw this scene, their eyes trembled violently. Niefeyu was indeed too terrifying. He could completely crush Jiang Yulong, who was at the same level as him. After all, Jiang Yulong was also someone on the overgod ranking, and he ranked in the top 5. Unfortunately, he was nothing before the most powerful overgod. He could not even withstand a single blow. Everyone was shocked by Niefeyu's battle prowess, their expressions filled with terror. Niefeyu only had the strength of a peak overgod. If he could become an overgod, wouldn't he be heaven-defying? Niefeyu was indeed the descendant of Niefenghua. The Wind and Cloud Alliance had one super genius after another. It's not because I'm strong, but because you're too weak, Niefeyu said coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain as he looked down on the world. At this moment, he was the ruler of this world, controlling everything. Niefeyu, pooh! Jiang Yulong's facial muscles twitched when he was mocked. He had just opened his mouth when his blood rushed to his heart, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jiang Yulong, if you weren't a member of the Jiang family, you would already be a corpse. Niefeyu said coldly, his eyes filled with sharpness. This was the most direct form of contempt. It was very naked. When the crowd heard Niefeyu's words, they could not help but gasp. It turned out that Niefeyu had not used his full strength in that move just now. With Niefeyu's temperament, there was naturally no need to lie. It seemed that his strength was even more terrifying than everyone had imagined. The power of the god imprisoning fetus is indeed terrifying. Nietian looked at Niefeyu, and his heart sank. The terror of the god imprisoning fetus was beyond his imagination. The god imprisoning fetus was already so terrifying, and the fiend god origin fetus was even more powerful. If the power of 9,000 fiend gods was completely awakened, the terror would be unimaginable. However, Nietian also discovered that when Niefeyu used the god imprisoning fetus, there seemed to be a strange power within his body. It was as if the god imprisoning fetus contained other powers besides the power of the god imprisoning fetus. Nietian, let's go. At this time, Niefeyu's figure slowly descended. He looked at Nietian and spoke in a deep voice. He had some words to say to Nietian. Nietian was slightly taken aback. He was still not sure of Niefeyu's identity, but the latter gave him a very familiar feeling. Moreover, the bloodline connection made him certain that this person was someone very close to him by blood. A martial artist's perception was very strong. Even if it was a weak bloodline connection, they could still clearly feel it. Niefeyu was Nietian's biological uncle, and the suppression that Nietian's parents had left in his body had been broken. Of course, he could feel this bloodline connection. Nietian nodded. He glanced at the heartbroken young master and prepared to leave with Niefeyu. Boom! However, just as Nietian was about to leave, the void suddenly trembled, and a rift split open in the sky. Someone had actually broken through the void and entered this place. The space-time of a domain realm was far more stable than that of a plane realm. The newcomer could actually directly break through the void. His strength was unimaginably terrifying. In the sky, a dark and boundless space-time crack appeared, and a figure walked out from it. The moment that figure appeared, the world suddenly shook violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. At the same time, the crowd below felt a boundless pressure rolling down from the sky. Everyone felt a suffocating pressure. Many martial artists below the divine state were actually unable to withstand this enormous pressure. Their bodies trembled steadily and became distorted, as if they were going to collapse at any time. What a terrifying person! Nietian frowned slightly. He felt the blood in his body churning, and the power in his body seemed to be going out of control. This person released an aura of oppression from hundreds of thousands of meters in the sky. Even someone like him, who had a martial body comparable to a peak middle deity, could not withstand it. It was too terrifying. Nietian had never felt such a powerful aura. Among all the people he had seen, Even Yi Qinghai and the demonic dragon Wang Minghui could not compare to this person. Perhaps only the inescapable Net's Earth Chief could barely contend against this person. Without a doubt, this person's strength was definitely at the peak of the God realm. Why would such a terrifying person appear here? Niefeiyu sensed something and looked up at the newcomer. His eyes flashed with fear, and he exclaimed a name in his heart. Nangong Duxiu. Chapter 1522. Nangong Duxiu, why is he here? Niefeiyu's heart sank when he saw that it was Nangong Duxiu. His expression changed. Did the Holy Parliament know of Nie Tian's existence? Nangong Duxiu was the vice president of the Holy Parliament. His status in the 9 major domains was extremely high, and his strength was terrifying. In the 9 major domains, the number of people that could defeat him could be counted on 2 hands. There could only be one reason for this person to appear here. God Fiend Origin Embryo. Everyone on the ground was stunned when they saw the figure in the sky. Although they didn't know Nangong Duxiu's identity, they could guess that she was a supreme expert that stood at the apex of the realm boundary from her aura alone. Such super experts usually did not show themselves. Many people would not even see them once in their entire lives. Many people felt extremely honored to have the opportunity to see the majesty of a peak expert. Young Master Heartbroken and the other holy adjudicators immediately recognized Nangong Duxiu. Their eyes shook violently. They did not know what had happened to cause Nangong Duxiu to appear. Nangong Duxiu's figure stood high in the sky. His sharp eyes swept across the crowd before landing on Niefeiyu. He said solemnly, Niefeiyu, you should not have appeared here. The Godfiend Origin Embryo was a taboo. The Holy President chose not to deal with it for now, while the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master chose to bide his time. The 2 giant beasts stared at the Godfiend Origin Embryo, maintaining a delicate balance like an arrow on a bowstring. Unfortunately, Niefeiyu's appearance broke this tense balance and attracted Nangong Duxiu. President Nangong, I should not have appeared here, but should you? Niefeiyu looked at Nangong Duxiu with a heavy gaze. Although his expression remained calm, his eyes could not conceal the panic. He faintly felt that something big was going to happen today. With Nangong Duxiu's appearance, it would not be easy to stop now. Niefeiyu, you are still too young. Nangong Duxiu shook his head with a smile. His figure moved, and he charged straight at Nie Tian. Do not approach him. Niefeiyu suddenly sensed something and roared. His body shone with golden radiance. His 9 yuan meridians revolved crazily, and his spirit restriction power was pushed to the extreme. It was even mixed with an extremely dense bloodline aura. Boom! In an instant, Niefeiyu's body blossomed with golden radiance. It actually condensed into a huge golden sword that was tens of thousands of meters long. His figure moved and turned into a golden light shadow that blasted at Nangong Duxiu. The golden radiance flickered, illuminating half the sky. It was glaring and dazzling like a shooting star. Seeing the scene in the sky, the gazes of the crowd violently trembled. Only now did they realize exactly how monstrous Niefeiyu was. At this moment, the combat power he displayed was several times, even dozens of times stronger than before. When Jiang Yulong saw the golden light in the sky, his eyes became dull. Only now did he truly understand how great the gap between him and Niefeiyu was. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. A mere over-god dares to act so insolently before this skilled leader? What a joke. Nangong Duxiu revealed a look of disdain as she faced Niefeiyu's full-powered attack. He casually slapped down with his palm, causing the void to shake violently. A boundless palm shadow fell down with a surging momentum, as if the world was collapsing. Peak paramount gods were so terrifying that they could cause heaven and earth to tremble and the wind to dim. Rumble! High up in the sky, under the watch of countless gazes, the golden light collided with the enormous palm. The heavens and earth trembled as a terrifying explosion resounded. It was like thunder from the 9 heavens, exploding without end. Chi chi chi. Terrifying and ear-piercing sounds rang out continuously. The golden radiance slowly weakened, and in the end, it was still no match for the enormous palm's vigorous power. Bang! In the next moment, there was a muffled sound, and a blood-red figure fell from the sky like a meteor, drawing out a dazzling blood-red radiance. In the end, Niefeiyu was still defeated by Nangong Duxiu. The difference in strength between the two was too great, an entire major realm. This was a gap that no amount of talent or willpower could make up for. Lord Feiyu, when Ye Wushang saw Niefeiyu being struck down by Nangong Duxiu's palm, he couldn't help but cry out. He wanted to catch Niefeiyu, but his figure trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Boom! At this moment, a figure soared into the sky, flashing with black flames. The wings were several hundred meters long, and with a sudden shake, it rushed in the direction of Niefeiyu's fall. The person who appeared at this moment was none other than Nye Tian. His figure flew out quickly, and before Niefeiyu fell to the ground, he caught him. Nye Tian. Niefeiyu felt his rapidly falling figure suddenly stop, and then a warm current flowed into his body. He couldn't help but open his eyes, and when he saw a silver-haired face, he couldn't help but squeeze out a smile. He said in a deep voice, "Sixth uncle's strength isn't enough, so this is all I can do." Sixth uncle. Nye Tian's eyes suddenly shrank. So this man was his sixth uncle. No wonder he felt a strong blood relationship from Niefeiyu, and no wonder Niefeiyu risked his life to protect him. It turned out that Niefeiyu was his sixth uncle. Don't speak. Nye Tian sensed that Niefeiyu's aura was rapidly weakening, and he couldn't help but growl. Then he released even more berserk origin power and poured it into Niefeiyu's body. Waves of pure dragon energy, in addition to the powerful vitality of the universe's boundary and the power of the stars, finally stabilized Niefeiyu's weak aura. Nye Tian let out a long breath of turbid air, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His complexion also became as pale as paper. Feeling Niefeiyu's strength at such a close distance, he could better understand that boundless power. Niefeiyu's strength was already unimaginable to Nye Tian, but even so, he couldn't resist a palm from Nangong Duxiu. A peak paramount god was truly a terrifying existence. Nye Tian suddenly raised his head and looked at Nangong Duxiu. His eyes didn't reveal fear, but intense killing intent. He didn't know Nangong Duxiu's identity, but she deserved to die for injuring Niefeiyu. In the air, the surging waves dissipated after a long time, and Nangong Duxiu's figure appeared with a strange look in his eyes. Although he had defeated Niefeiyu with a palm and hadn't used his full strength, he was still shocked by Niefeiyu's strength. He thought that if Niefeiyu was a peak paramount god like him, he definitely wouldn't be Niefeiyu's match. The Nye family's god-sealing fetus is truly terrifying, Nangong Duxiu said with a heavy heart. He seemed to understand why the Sacred Assembly's president wanted to get rid of the god-sealing fetus back then. The god-sealing fetus was an even more terrifying existence than the god-sealing fetus. Once it matured, it would definitely become a heaven-defying expert. At that time, there would probably be no need for the Sacred Assembly to exist. Thinking of this, Nangong Duxiu's eyes sank, and he looked at Nye Tian with killing intent. But the next moment, he suddenly sensed something and looked at the two people on the ground, Mo Rushi and Cher. Chapter 1523. In the void, Nangong Duxiu's figure was like a killer. He sent out a palm strike towards Mo Rushi and Cher. Boom! The massive palm strike had a majestic aura that engulfed the world. Boundless power wreaked havoc in the world. A terrifying rumble came from the sky, as if the world was about to be destroyed. Rushi! Cher! Nye Tian was startled. He couldn't help but cry out when he saw the scene in the sky. He didn't expect that Nangong Duxiu would suddenly attack Mo Rushi and Cher. Nangong Duxiu was simply a madman. With his strength, this palm strike would not only kill Mo Rushi and Cher, but also the people around them. If Nangong Duxiu's palm strike landed, it would kill tens of thousands of people. The The crowd looked up at the huge palm descending from the sky. A violent force came crashing down, and many of the weaker cultivators were crushed into a bloody light on the spot. The Parliament Hall also collapsed and was instantly reduced to rubble. Boom! Boom! At that critical moment, two figures suddenly appeared behind Mo Rushi and Cher. They soared into the sky, and two terrifying forces surged into the sky to meet the attack. Dragnet secret guards. Nietion's eyes trembled and flickered with light. He immediately realized that it was the Dragnet's secret guards protecting Mo Rushi and Cher. These two secret guards had been protecting Mo Rushi and Cher all this time. Nietion hadn't noticed them at all. Nietion had been in danger many times, but these two had remained indifferent. Clearly, they only had one mission, and that was to protect Mo Rushi and Cher. As for whether Nietion was in danger or not, it was none of their business. You're finally willing to come out? Nangong Dushio sneered at the counterattack of the Dragnet's secret guards from high up in the sky. He could tell at a glance that there were experts protecting Mo Rushi and Cher. This palm strike wasn't to kill Mo Rushi and Cher, but to force out the people behind them. However, in order to force out these two secret guards, Nangong Dushio had killed thousands of innocent people. Perhaps in the eyes of a paramount god like him, these people were nothing more than ants, not even people. Boom! Boom! In the void, there were two loud sounds. Under the terrifying collision, two figures directly fell from the building, and before they landed, they turned into two balls of bloody light. Nangong Dushio killed two Net's secret guards with a single palm strike, but his palm was also blocked by two dark guards who risked their lives. Both of them were early paramount gods, and their true fighting prowess was below that of Niefeiyu. When Nangong Dushio had attacked Niefeiyu, she had been afraid and had not used her full strength. But facing the hidden guards, he would not show mercy, so he killed two of them with a single palm. Mo Rushi and Cher were stunned. They didn't know that they had such a powerful protector by their side. At this moment, the crowd began to flee, leaving this space. Nangong Dushio stood in the air, looking down coldly like a god of death. In the next moment, his eyes were still locked onto Mo Rushi and Cher, and the killing intent in his eyes suddenly became more intense. He thought coldly, I didn't expect these two little girls to have such a background. One is the emperor of the netherworld, and the other is even more terrifying. These two girls must die today. Nangong Dushio could see through Cher's true identity at a glance, but he was more afraid of Mo Rushi. In his opinion, Mo Rushi was even more terrifying than Cher. If Mo Rushi didn't die, she would become a thorny problem in the future. The two guards are dead. It's your turn now. Nangong Dushio smiled cold, and without hesitation, he slapped down with his palm. Suddenly, a mountainous palm image appeared, blotting out the sun as it descended toward Mo Rushi and Cher. No! The sudden turn of events caused Nietion's entire body to tremble. His blood and chi surged madly, releasing boundless star power. Boundless primal chaos flame-burned. At the same time, his dragon blood and fiend god power morphed into sharp black blades and whizzed out. In the blink of an eye, Nietion had used all of his strength. Unfortunately, this power was too weak in front of a pinnacle paramount god. Nietion's figure blocked in the air, and he felt the violent power descending. The power around him was broken layer by layer, shattered, and dissipated in the air. The ultimate killing power was about to descend on Nietion, but at this moment, something happened. Boom! A ball of golden radiance appeared in the void and turned into a huge golden shield that enveloped Nietion and the others. Bang! In the next moment, a terrifying sound echoed. The huge palm landed on the golden shield, but it was directly shattered and turned into waves of air that dissipated in the void. Nangong Dushio's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly raised his head to look at the sky. Wind and Cloud Alliance Master. When he saw the cold face in the sky, his eyes trembled, and he cried out in surprise. High up in the sky, a green-clothed figure stood amidst the fierce wind. He was like a mountain, majestic and unclimbable. The person who came was none other than the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master, Nie Dao. Father, you finally came. Nie Feiyu stood shakily in the air. When he saw the figure clearly, his firm eyes couldn't help but become slightly moist. When Ye Tian heard Nie Feiyu's voice, his figure paused slightly, and his eyes that looked at Nie Dao flickered intensely. He is sixth uncle's father, which means he is my father's father. Isn't that my grandfather? Nie Tian exclaimed in his heart, and his expression changed slightly. Nie Dao's figure stood upright, and his expression was stern. His eyes were very complicated, and it was unknown what he was thinking. When he looked at Nie Tian, his aged face couldn't help but tremble, and his eyes seemed to be surging with warmth. His gaze did not stop for long, and he immediately looked at Mo Rushi and Cher, and his expression became even more astonished. But then, his gaze stopped on Mo Rushi, and he could no longer move away. His expression instantly became frightened, and he exclaimed in his heart, "This girl actually has a sage physique, and this is bad." Looking at Mo Rushi, Nie Dao's eyes flickered intensely, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. His entire body couldn't help but tremble. A demon god nascent embryo was already very troublesome, and now there was another Mo Rushi. This made things even more complicated. When Ye Tian sensed Nie Dao's reaction, he couldn't help but be stunned, and his face was filled with doubt. He originally thought that Nie Dao would be surprised because of Cher's identity, but he didn't expect Nie Dao's gaze to be locked onto Mo Rushi. It was as if Nie Dao had discovered something on Mo Rushi's body, and it made him extremely frightened. Nie Tian couldn't understand. Could a sage physique be more terrifying than Cher, who possessed the three-life vein? Alliance Master Nie. At this moment, Nangong Dushio regained his calm, and he gloomily looked at Nie Dao and said, "You finally came." At this moment, Nangong Dushio was actually quite pleased with himself. He knew that even if Nie Dao appeared and protected Nie Tian, he might not be able to protect Mo Rushi and Cher. From the looks of it, Mo Rushi and Cher were even more terrifying than Nie Tian. Nie Dao's body suddenly trembled, but he ignored Nangong Dushio. Instead, he looked at another part of the void and said in a deep voice, "Nine Gods Calamity, since you're already here, come out." Nine Gods Calamity was the name of the sacred president. "Brother Nye, long time no see." At the next moment, the void slightly trembled, and a black-clothed figure appeared. He spoke in a deep voice that was illusory, as if it came from the void itself. It was extremely strange. Chapter 1524. High up in the sky, a black-clothed figure floated like an illusory phantom, giving off an extremely eerie feeling. President. Nangong Dushio could not help but be stunned when he saw this figure and exclaimed. He did not know that the sacred president had personally come. The Wind and Cloud Alliance Master and the sacred president, the two peak existences of the 9 major domains, had finally met. Who would have thought that a small city like Muyu City would welcome two supreme powerhouses who stood at the pinnacle? Yet Tian gazed at the two figures confronting each other high up in the sky, and deeply felt the vast and boundless strength between them. In his eyes, these two peak existences were like towering mountains, while he was just a speck of dust, pitifully insignificant. The Wind and Cloud Alliance Master and the Sacred President had finally met and faced off because of the awakening of the God-Fiend origin embryo. The few people on the ground looked up at the two figures in the sky. Those were two huge peaks, while they were just specks of dust on the ground. They were so inconspicuous. Huajioshin, you finally appeared. Nie Dao's figure was like a mountain as he stood tall in the sky. The space within 10,000 meters around him was surging with golden light, making him look like the sun of the 9 heavens, ready to unleash the most terrifying power at any time. Brother Nye, it's been more than 200 years. It's time for us to meet, Huajioshin said solemnly. His body was shrouded in darkness, as if he was the darkness itself. His entire being was like an abyss that floated in the sky. As his deep voice fell, Jioshin released a boundless and invisible pressure that spread in the sky. It was obvious that he wanted to drive everyone away. The crowd felt the suffocating pressure and could not bear it, so they quickly left. In the blink of an eye, everyone had left, leaving only a few figures. Feiyu, take Nie Tian and the others away. Nie Dao frowned when he saw this. He waved his hand, and a golden light entered Nie Feiyu's body. The latter's pale complexion instantly turned for the better, and his strength recovered by more than half. Yes, Nie Feiyu answered and moved, wanting to take Nie Tian and the others away. The others can leave, but that brat Nie Tian and those two girls can't. However, just as Nie Feiyu moved, Jioshin's voice suddenly rang out. Then, a strange power appeared, locking down the space around Nie Feiyu, Nie Tian, and the others, making them unable to move. What a terrifying power! Nie Tian could feel the space around him being locked down. He frowned, and his expression changed. It's the 9 pupils. At the same time, Sakura's voice rang out. No wonder this guy called Jioshin is so terrifying. It turns out that he has the 6th other pupil, the 9 pupil. 9 pupil. Nie Tian's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of this strange pupil before. It was ranked 6th in the 10 great innate strange pupils. Rumor had it that it was even more terrifying than the 7th-ranked 9-colored pupil. Nie Tian knew all of the 10 great innate strange pupils, but he hadn't seen many of them. The most powerful one he had seen before was probably Rui Qinyu's 7th pupil, the 9-colored pupil. Now, it should be Jioshin's 9 pupil. Actually, the 9 pupil and the 9-colored pupil were about the same in power. It was just that the 9 pupil was the nemesis of the 9-colored pupil, which was why it was ranked ahead of the 9-colored pupil. Nie Tian didn't expect that the God State Peak expert in front of him would actually have the legendary 9 pupil. Currently, Rui Qinyu's 9-colored pupil was far inferior to Jioshin's 9 pupil. However, this wasn't the difference between the two other pupils. It was the difference between Jioshin and Rui Qinyu. When Rui Qinyu reached the God State Peak and fully opened the 9-colored pupil, she might not be weaker than Jioshin. In front of Jioshin's 9 pupil, Nie Tian and the others couldn't fight back at all. Nie Dao frowned slightly when he saw Nie Feiyu and the others being controlled, but he wasn't in a hurry to act. Jioshin wouldn't dare to kill before the two sides officially fell out. In the blink of an eye, everyone had left. The entire Muyu city had become an empty city. Only Jioshin, Nie Dao, Nangong Duxiu, Nie Feiyu, Nie Tan, and Mo Rushi and Shero left. Nie Chio had also left temporarily. Jioshin, what do you want? Just say it. Seeing that the unrelated people had left, Nie Dao looked at Jioshin coldly and spoke in a deep voice. Jioshin seemed to laugh. She actually let go of Nie Feiyu and the others, allowing them to flash behind Nie Dao. Alliance leader Nie, since the unrelated people have left, I won't waste any more time. Jioshin's eerie voice rang out. The devil god nascent embryo can live, but the two girls with him must die. As soon as the word die was uttered, Jioshin's entire body erupted with extreme coldness. The space within 10,000 meters of her was immediately locked down by a sinister power. Impossible, Nie Dao said in a deep voice. As long as I'm here, no one can hurt them. With that, Nie Dao waved his hand, sending out beams of golden light that enveloped Nie Tan and Mo Rushi and Cher. Nie Dao was already a peak paramount god, so his god-sealing power was terrifying. Even the 9 I couldn't easily break through it. Grandfather, Nie Tian sensed a strong protective aura, causing his blood chi to surge uncontrollably and his eyes to flicker violently. He could sense Nie Dao's determination, but the enemy he was facing was too terrifying. Jioshin was definitely no weaker than Nie Dao. In fact, she might even be stronger than him. More than 200 years ago, Jioshin and Nie Dao had fought. Nie Dao had been defeated and forced to give up his eldest son, Nie Fenghua. Now, 200 years later, Would Niedao be a match for Hua Jiushin? Umph. Suddenly, Hua Jiushin laughed coldly. His laughter contained a sinister aura as he said solemnly, Niedao, don't you think you're too naive to think that you can protect the three of them? The devil god nascent embryo is a forbidden embryo. Letting it live is already the greatest concession I can make. As for that girl with the meridians of 3 lives, I'm sure you know better than me what her status is. Even if I allow her to live, do you think the other factions will? If you want to protect the meridians of 3 lives, you'll be making an enemy of all the factions in the 9 realms. Will the Heavenly Punisher Alliance, the Guiwu clan, the Yu clan, and the other aristocratic clans allow it? The extremely cold voice was like steel needles that fiercely pierced into Nie Dao's heart when he heard it. Nie Tian frowned. He didn't know who Cher was. Why was protecting Cher the same as making an enemy of all the factions in the 9 realms? Nie Dao's expression was grave, and his eyes flickered with determination. He seemed to be wavering a little. It was already difficult enough for him to protect Nie Tian. It would be too difficult to protect the meridians of 3 lives as well. There's another girl. She has the #1 martial physique of all time, the body of a sage. Hua Jiushin's voice sounded again. Actually, the body of a sage isn't that big of a deal. The problem is that she chose the wrong man. That's why she can't live. Nie Tian's pupils shrank when he heard Hua Jiushin's words. What did she mean? Was it wrong for Mo Rushi to choose him? Just because of that, Mo Rushi had to die? Chapter 1525. Hua Jiushin's cold voice resounded through the air, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become deathly silent and oppressive. Nie Dao's expression was as gloomy as still water, as if he was thinking about something. At a certain moment, he saw Nie Tian's eyes, which were filled with pain and anger. This scene inexplicably caused his heart to tremble and his entire body to tremble. This scene was so similar to the one from back then. Nie Tian's eyes were clearly the same as Nie Fenghua's eyes from back then. I can make a mistake once, but I definitely can't make a second mistake. Nie Dao's aged eyes suddenly trembled as a deep voice roared angrily in his heart. He had given up on Nie Fenghua back then, so he definitely wouldn't give up on Nie Tian now. The moment he thought of this, Nie Dao abruptly raised his head. His eyes became firm and stern, filled with determination. Hua Jiushin could sense the determination in Nie Dao's eyes, and his eyes couldn't help but sink. His incorporeal figure trembled slightly, and then he said coldly, Nie Dao, the devil god, nascent embryo, the 3 lives meridian, and the body of sage. Can you protect all of them? Nie Dao's eyes were resolute as he said loudly, I will protect them if I can, and even if I can't, I will protect them. This time, I definitely won't take even half a step back. As his thunderous roar fell, Nie Dao's body suddenly shook, and the golden light around his body exploded. His body was like a golden sun, blazing with incomparable intensity. Grandfather! Nie Tian felt a surge of warmth in his heart when he saw this. Ever since he was young, he had never known what family was. But at this moment, he felt a warmth that he had never felt before. It turned out that this grandfather he had never met actually loved him so much. Using one's life to protect one's family was what a martial artist should truly do. This time, Nie Dao wouldn't compromise even if he had to put his life on the line. Nie Dao, you're forcing my hand. Hua Jiushin growled, and his black body unleashed surging waves that surged in all directions. He clearly hadn't expected Nie Dao to be so resolute this time. Then let's fight. Nie Dao roared, and his body glowed with golden light. He suddenly raised his palm and violently thrust it out. Instantly, a golden palm image appeared. It was tens of thousands of meters in size, and it filled the sky. This guild leader isn't afraid of you. Hua Jiushin was also enraged. Her dark figure trembled slightly, and a black palm shadow whizzed out. An evil and violent aura filled the entire sky. The battle between the 2 supreme peak experts suddenly broke out. Nie Tian looked at the scene in the distant sky, and his eyes became dull. This kind of power was beyond his imagination, and he couldn't understand it at all. Boom! A thunderous boom resounded through the sky. The instant the two palms collided, a terrifying shockwave exploded from the center of the collision, spreading in all directions. Boom! Violent waves of air rushed into the sky, and a huge space-time gap appeared in the sky. It was tens of thousands of meters wide, and it released a terrifying space-time storm that engulfed everything. Even space itself was about to be devoured. At the same time, a terrifying air wave hit the ground, and the entire Muyu city was instantly enveloped by the air wave. Boom! Crack, crack, crack! The terrifying power contained within the airwave exploded, and the ground was forcibly torn apart. The entire Muyu city was instantly turned into a huge crater. After a long time, the endless air wave dissipated, and two figures stood tall in the sky, completely unharmed. And yet Tian and the others were protected by the God-sealing power, so they weren't injured either. When Ye Tian saw everything on the ground, he was completely dumbfounded. Muyu City was thousands of kilometers in circumference, but it had been turned into a huge crater in the blink of an eye. It was too terrifying. A battle between peak paramount gods had destroyed a huge city with a single move. Fortunately, the people of Muyu City had left early. Otherwise, at least millions of people would have died. Nye Dao and Hua Jioshin faced each other in the sky. Nye Dao, do you really want to fight to the death with me? Hua Jioshin's abyss-like figure swayed, and she said coldly, "You can protect the fiend god nascent embryo. That's the most I can do." Hua Jioshin had defeated Nye Dao before, so she wasn't afraid of him. But if the two of them fought to the death, even if she could kill Nye Dao, she would have to pay a heavy price. In the end, both of them would suffer great losses. This wasn't an outcome Hua Jioshin wanted to see. Impossible. Nye Dao's figure was like a huge mountain, and his voice echoed through the sky. As long as I still have a breath left in me, don't even think about hurting my family. He knew about Nye Tian's relationship with Mo Rushi and Cher, so he treated them as family. He didn't care about Cher's relationship with the Emperor of the Netherworld. All he knew was that Cher was Nye Tian's wife, and that was enough. As for Mo Rushi, he had to protect her. Nye Dao, you're too stubborn. Hua Jioshin roared. She was clearly furious, but in the next moment, her figure swayed slightly, as if she discovered something. Nye Dao's eyes narrowed as he sensed something. He frowned, and his expression darkened. Lord President, Brother Nye, long time no see. In the next moment, the void trembled slightly, and a strange figure broke through the void and descended. The newcomer was a burly old man. His body was as thin as firewood, and he looked like a giant skeleton. However, his aura was extremely terrifying, and it wasn't any weaker than Hua Jioshin and Nye Dao. Another peak expert. Nye Tian frowned, and his expression suddenly changed. He didn't know if the newcomer was friend or foe. Nye Dao was already at a disadvantage, and there was also Nangong Dushio watching from the side. If the newcomer was an enemy, then Nye Dao would be in great danger. Alliance Master Jiang, you've come at the right time. Hua Jioshin saw the newcomer's figure clearly, and actually laughed playfully. Nye Dao looked at the newcomer with a heavy gaze, but he didn't say anything. The newcomer was none other than the Alliance Master of the Xingtian Alliance, Jiang Lai. The Xingtian Alliance and the Wind and Cloud Alliance were known as the two strongest alliances. They were a powerful force that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Sacred Parliament, and their Alliance Master, Jiang Lai, was strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Sacred President and the Wind and Cloud Alliance Master. Once upon a time, the Wind and Cloud Alliance and the Xingtian Alliance were the best of allies. Unfortunately, 200 years ago, when Nye Fenghua's matter happened, the Xingtian Alliance didn't stand up for Wind and Cloud Alliance. Instead, they stood against Wind and Cloud Alliance and supported the Sacred Parliament. Because of this, Nye Dao had no choice but to hand over Nye Fenghua in order to protect Wind and Cloud Alliance. From then on, Wind and Cloud Alliance and the Xingtian Alliance were no longer allies, but enemies who had yet to completely fall out with each other. Jiang Lai's arrival caused Nye Dao's heart to sink, and his old but resolute face immediately turned gloomy. It would be troublesome if Jiang Lai stood on Hua Jioshin's side again. And with Nie Dao's understanding of Jiang Lai, the latter would definitely support Hua Jioshin. The fiend god origin embryo has awakened, so of course I have to come and join in the fun. Jiang Lai glanced at the ground and smiled coldly. His gaze swept past Hua Jioshin and Nie Dao, and then landed on Ye Tian and the others in the distance. Alliance Master Jiang, take a good look. It's much more lively than you can imagine. Hua Jioshin smiled sinisterly, and her dark figure actually swayed a few times, as if she was very pleased with herself. The meridians of 3 lives. That girl actually possesses the Netherworld Emperor's bloodline. Jiang Lai's gaze swept past Cher, and then he cried out in surprise, unable to conceal the shock in his heart. Alliance Master Jiang, the Netherworld Emperor's bloodline isn't scary. What's even scarier is the other girl. Hua Jioshin smiled again, and the aura around her body surged, faintly revealing a skeletal face. It was strange and frightening. Jiang Lai frowned, and then his gaze locked onto Mo Rushi. He first laughed, but in the next moment, he seemed to have discovered something. His eyes flickered violently, and his entire body began to tremble, as if he had discovered something extremely frightening. His mouth opened wide, but not a single sound came out. Nie Tian frowned, and his gaze trembled when he saw that Jiang Lai's reaction wasn't right. Chapter 1526. Nie Tian's eyes flickered when he saw Jiang Lai's reaction. Jiang Lai was a peak paramount god. So what could he have sensed from Mo Rushi that made him so frightened? He couldn't think of anything that could make a peak paramount god so frightened. Nie Tian frowned. He was even more puzzled when he thought of how Nie Dao and Hua Jioshin were paying more attention to Mo Rushi. Nie Tian couldn't help but look at Mo Rushi. He sent his divine sense over, but didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Is there a secret on Rushi that I don't know? Nie Tian looked at Mo Rushi and wondered. Mo Rushi's eyes were evasive at this moment, as if she was thinking about something. There was indeed something she hadn't told Nie Tian because she didn't want Nie Tian to be distracted because of her. This girl must die. Just then, Xingtian Alliance Master Jiang Lai finally reacted. His old face instantly turned gloomy, and he let out a low roar. His eyes revealed an extremely cold, killing intent. The intense killing intent was even stronger than when he saw Cher. He wanted nothing more than to kill Mo Rushi right now. Nie Tian's heart sank when he saw this, and his expression changed. What had Jiang Lai discovered that made him want to kill Mo Rushi? Don't even think about it. Jiang Lai hadn't even finished speaking when Nie Dao's thunderous roar resounded, and the god-restraining golden light on his body actually became even stronger. His robust figure suddenly took a step forward, causing the space around him to suddenly tremble. With me here, don't even think about harming a single one of them. His thunderous voice showed Nie Dao's determination. Even if he died today, he wouldn't take half a step back. Nie Dao, Hua Jioshin was stunned. He shouted Nie Dao's name word by word, and said in a deep voice, "You overestimate yourself. It's impossible for you to stop me alone. If Alliance Master Xingtian joins us, you won't stand a chance." Lord Guild Leader, Alliance Master Nie is a stubborn old man. There's no point in talking to him. Let's make our move, Jiang Lai said darkly, an intense killing intent radiating from between his brows. So what if the two of you join hands? I, Nie Dao, swear to protect my family with my life. Nie Dao's face was gloomy as he roared furiously. He knew that he was no match for Hua Jioshin and Jiang Lai, but now that things had come to this, he had no other choice. He had to fight to the end. Stubborn. Hua Jioshin sneered, and her abyss-like eyes flickered. A burst of evil energy gushed forth, transforming into a sharp black claw that lunged forward in a frenzy. Instantly, the entire sky became dim and filled with evil energy of extreme and the atmosphere was oppressive and deathly silent. You want to touch my family? Impossible. Nie Dao roared angrily, and his body glowed with golden light. The spirit-sealing power was unleashed in a frenzy, causing the world to tremble. Amidst the boundless light, a sharp golden blade whizzed out. It was like a sword that could slice apart heaven and earth, and it was extremely murderous. Rumble! In the void, the two boundless powers collided, and a terrifying shockwave was released. Space was directly torn apart, and an endless space-time storm surged out, devouring most of the power. The shockwave surged in all directions, and the earth was torn apart once more. A giant abyss was formed in an instant, and it was as if doomsday had arrived. In the sky, Jioshin and Nye Dao hurriedly retreated, putting tens of thousands of meters between them. The clash between the 9 pupils and the spirit-sealing fetus made both of them somewhat fearful. Troublemaker, die. However, at this moment, an extremely cold voice rang out, and a figure crazily pressed down from the void. Jiang Lai had struck out with a palm, and his target was Mo Rushi. Rushi! Nietian cried out when he saw this. He wanted to act, but he discovered that he couldn't summon any strength at all. Under the pressure of Jiang Lai's aura, he didn't even have the chance to attack. Jiang Lai was a peak expert, but instead of fighting Nye Dao head-on, he actually attacked Nye Dao's back. How despicable! No! In the distant sky, Nye Dao cried out when he saw this shocking scene, and his eyes trembled in fear. He never thought that Jiang Lai would actually try to kill Mo Rushi. At this moment, he wanted to act, but it was too late. In the sky, Jiang Lai's aura surged wildly, and his eyes were filled with the most resolute killing intent. He roared in a frenzy. The scourge of the god-fiend origin embryo and the sage body must not be allowed to live. Boom! As his violent voice fell, a sure-kill palm surged out and pressed down on Mo Rushi. At this moment, the spirit-sealing barrier that Nye Dao had left on Mo Rushi and the others had already weakened. If this palm landed, not only would Mo Rushi die, but Cher, who wasn't far away, would also die. The scourge of the god-fiend origin embryo and the sage body. In an instant, Jiang Lai's words reverberated in Nye Tian's mind. His eyes trembled violently, and he instantly understood something. All the blood in his body surged in an instant. At this moment, Nye Tian finally understood why 9 deities Hua and Jiang Lai were so afraid of Mo Rushi. It was because Mo Rushi was pregnant with Nye Tian's child. A sage body couldn't possibly attract so much attention from 9 deities Hua and Jiang Lai, but a sage body coupled with the god-fiend origin embryo was terrifying enough. The god-fiend origin embryo was already a taboo, and if it was combined with the power of a sage body, it was hard to imagine how terrifying this child would be. The child in Mo Rushi's womb was what 9 deities Hua and Jiang Lai were truly afraid of. They didn't want to kill Mo Rushi, but the unborn child in her womb. Mo Rushi hadn't had the time to tell Nye Tian about her pregnancy. She didn't want to distract Nye Tian, so she wanted to wait until Nye Tian obtained the Origin Earthstone before telling him. However, she didn't expect that Nye Tian's god-fiend origin embryo would awaken and cause things to escalate to this stage. The child in Mo Rushi's womb was also one of the reasons why Nye Dao couldn't back down. That was the bloodline of the Nye family. So how could he allow an unborn child to be killed? The scourge of the devil fetus cannot be left alive. 9 deities was spoke coldly in the sky. His face that was hidden in the darkness gradually revealed itself. It was actually a black skull. From his point of view, no one could save Mo Rushi at this moment. You're not allowed to hurt them. Just as Jiang Lai's fatal palm landed, Nye Tian suddenly roared. His roar was so loud that it could pierce through the clouds and crack rocks, and a terrifying dragon's roar could be heard. At this moment, the blood energy in Nye Tian's body boiled violently. Waves of dark energy were released from his blood and instantly infused into the 9 dragon veins. Bang, bang, bang. Countless explosions sounded from within his body. The dragon vein seal was directly broken by the impact of the dark energy. Roar! Almost instantly, Nye Tian's body directly dragonized. A 3,000-meter-long scarlet gold dragon appeared in the sky. The dragon vein seal was formed by the powerful dragon energy that Niet Tian had obtained from the dragon coffin on the cliff wall. Up until now, the dragon vein seal had only been broken twice. The first time was when Niet Tian obtained the dragon vein seal, and the second time was when he fused with the dual meridians. But this time, in his extreme rage, the dark, evil energy within his body exploded and forcefully broke the seal on the dragon vein. Chapter 1527. Roar. An earth-shattering dragon roar reverberated in the sky as the crimson golden dragon tumbled out of the void. Like a giant shield, it stood in front of Rushi and Cher. Bang! In the next moment, there was a muffled sound as the violent palm landed on the body of the crimson gold dragon. The dragon's body shook slightly, and large patches of dragon scales fell off. A bloody hole that was over 100 meters wide appeared, and blood dyed the sky red. The entire sky was filled with a heroic aura. Although the crimson golden dragon was injured, it released its draconic aura to protect Rushi and Cher. Niet Tian had absorbed the draconic aura of a 3,000-meter-long golden dragon. Coupled with the power of the supreme dragon bloodline and the dark, evil energy in his body, he was able to unleash his full strength and block a palm strike from a pinnacle paramount god. However, his martial body was still too weak, and he couldn't unleash the full power of the golden dragon's draconic aura. A golden dragon at its peak was definitely no weaker than a pinnacle godded expert. It could definitely withstand an attack from a pinnacle godded expert. Because of this, Niet Tian was still injured, and his injuries were very serious. Jianglai was dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. He was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. How could he have imagined that an inferior deity martial artist's body would contain such terrifying power? The power that Niet Tian had unleashed was beyond everyone's expectations. Dragon eyes, Huajioshin exclaimed in shock as he stared at the crimson golden dragon in the sky. The crimson golden dragon that had appeared in front of everyone wasn't an illusory dragon, but an actual dragon body of flesh and blood. Dragon whiskers, dragon scales, dragon horns, dragon claws. Every part of it was made of flesh and blood. This kid is too terrifying. Huajioshin's eyes glazed over as he screamed inwardly. The killing intent in his eyes suddenly became resolute. He could sense the terrifying potential in Niet Tian. Even though he was only a peak lesser god, he could already fight peak paramount gods head-on. It was hard to imagine how powerful he would be once he grew stronger. At this moment, Huajioshin was determined to kill Niet Tian. My Niet Dao's grandson is indeed not simple. Niet Dao laughed wildly when he saw the crimson golden dragon. He was unusually excited. Just from the fact that Niet Tian was able to block Jianglai's palm, his potential was already more terrifying than Yefeng was. Alliance Master Jiang, what are you waiting for? Make your move. Huajioshin let out a sinister and furious roar. Her black body surged like a whirlpool, and a terrifying, evil energy of extreme filled the air. His plan was very simple. As long as he stalled Niet Dao, Jianglai would have some time to deal with Niet Tian first, and then the two of them could join forces to kill Niet Dao. Although Niet Tian was terrifying, it was still too much for him to fight Jianglai. All right, Jianglai finally reacted. He let out a low roar, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. His body began to emit a berserk aura, and a huge armored giant formed around him. It was 30 to 40,000 meters tall, and it stood in the air like it was the ruler of this world. The armor of heaven punishing. Jianglai was using the Jiang family's heaven punishing bloodline. Jiang Yulong had used the armor of heaven punishing when he fought Nie Feiyu, but Nie Feiyu had defeated it with a single move. But Jianglai's armor of heaven punishing was far superior to Jiang Yulong's. Not only was his armor of heaven punishing even larger, but it was even more corporeal. It was already vaguely resembling a true heaven punishing war god. Jianglai was actually using the armor of heaven punishing to deal with Niet Tian. What a vicious move. Since he was using the armor of heaven punishing, It meant that he wasn't going to give Niet Tion the slightest chance. Stinking brat. I don't care if you're a human or a dragon. You're going to die today. Jiang Lai bellowed. He took a step forward, causing space to ripple and wind to surge. It was as if heaven and earth were about to collapse. Roar! The crimson gold dragon roared into the sky, its roar resounding through the 9 heavens. Niet Tion knew that he wasn't Jiang Lai's match, but behind him were his wife and unborn child. How could he take half a step back? The 3,000-meter-long divine dragon appeared so tiny in front of the armor of heaven punishing. Boom! The armor of heaven punishing's huge palm descended, blasting wildly at Niet Tion. Waves of violent waves were released, and the heavens and earth wailed. The crimson gold dragon's body tumbled upwards, actually clashing head-on with the armor of heaven punishing. Behind him was his loved one, so he couldn't back down. Bam! With a dull thud, the huge palm landed on the dragon's body. Countless dragon scales fell off, and pieces of flesh and blood were crushed. The entire dragon's body was drenched in blood. Roar! The instant of intense pain made Niet Tion let out a mournful cry. He felt that all the bones in his body were about to shatter, and his entire dragon body was twisted and deformed. The armor of heaven punishing was too terrifying. Even with Niet Tion's dragonized body, he still couldn't block it. Niet Tion, Mo Rushi, and Cher saw the tragic scene in midair, and they were already sobbing uncontrollably. Their clear eyes were filled with tears. Nie Feiyu watched from the side, but he couldn't do anything. He only hated himself for being so weak that he couldn't help Niet Tion at all. In the distance, Nie Dao saw the blood-stained dragon, and his expression was sorrowful. However, he was entangled by the 9 gods of calamity, and he couldn't split himself up. Bam! Following that, another palm descended, ruthlessly bombarding the dragon's body. Endless blood gushed out, and the heavens and earth were dyed red. Brat, let's see how long you can last. Jiang Lai's eyes were cold and murderous, and his entire body was filled with killing intent. Niet Tion was too terrifying, and he definitely couldn't be allowed to live. Bam! 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 Following that, a series of muffled sounds rang out, and the crimson gold dragon was completely dyed red with blood. Many of the wounds had already exposed the dragon's bones, and its flesh was a horrifying mess. However, Niet Tion didn't back down at all. Relying on his stubborn conviction, he remained clear-headed. He told himself that he had to hold on. Niet Tion. Niet Dao saw this scene from afar, and he roared in grief and anger. His entire body suddenly released blood chi, and a blood-colored golden light filled the air. He roared violently, 9 gods of calamity, don't stop me. Seeing Niet Dao suddenly ignite his blood chi, 9 gods of calamity couldn't help but freeze. She immediately understood that Niet Dao was going to fight to the death. 9 gods of calamity only wanted to delay Niet Dao and didn't want to fight to the death with him. Although she was confident that she could defeat Niet Dao, she would have to pay a heavy price. If she fell into a state of weakness and Jiang Lai came back to bite her, that would be terrible. The moment she thought of this, 9 gods of calamity struck out with her palm, and then her figure retreated rapidly. At the same time, she shouted, Nangong, do it! 9 gods of calamity had already retreated tens of thousands of meters by the time she finished speaking. At the same time, Nangong Dushio, who had been watching the battle from the sidelines, suddenly sneered and flashed toward Mo Rushi and the others. 9 gods of calamity was too treacherous. On one hand, she let Niet Dao fight Jiang Lai, and, on the other hand, she let Nangong Dushio take action. This was undoubtedly the biggest dilemma for Niet Dao. Should he save Niet Tion, or should he save Mo Rushi? Die! Nangong Dushio's figure appeared in the blink of an eye, and with a growl, he violently struck out with his palm. An enormous palm descended from the sky toward Mo Rushi and Cher. He was also a peak paramount god, And although he was a bit weaker than 9 gods of calamity and the 2 alliance lords, he wasn't that much weaker. Chapter 1528. Boom! A terrifying explosion resounded in the sky as Nangong Dushio's palm descended. Merciless killing intent descended on Mo Rushi and Cher once again. No! Nyetian suddenly sensed something and bellowed. The dragon roar shook the sky and made him seem even more heroic. His power had been exhausted, and his aura was weakening bit by bit. His blood chi was dissipating in the air. Even if he had an obsession in his heart, there was nothing he could do. At this moment, Nyetian felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. His entire body was filled with soul-tearing pain. His strength was too weak. He had really reached his limit. Don't hurt them. At the same time, Niedao's voice resounded. His aged eyes were filled with tears, and his expression was extremely tragic. He was the Alliance Master of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, an existence that stood at the peak of the 9 major domains, but he could not protect his family at this moment. Sister Rushi. At the same time, Cher's voice resounded. With a shout, she attacked with the fallen god sword. Boundless red sword intent whizzed out, but it was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It could not withstand a single blow. Cher rushed into the sky and faced the attack without any hesitation. If someone had to be sacrificed, she was willing to take Mo Rushi's place. Cher. The sudden scene caused Nyetian's expression to change. His huge dragon body froze in the air. The pulse of 3 life? You will all die. Nangong Dushio sneered. It was a joke for Cher to block his palm with her strength. The palm descended with a resounding boom, about to land on Snow's body. At this critical moment, something strange happened. Who dares to hurt Her Highness? A deep roar resounded in the void. Then, a black-clothed figure appeared. A black palm shadow appeared and soared into the sky. Boom! The 2 palms collided, and there was a loud explosion. Boundless shockwaves surged. At the next moment, a strange power appeared and rescued Mo Rushi and Cher before the shockwaves completely exploded. Nangong Dushio frowned when she felt the impact of the waves. She was forced back a few thousand meters. He steadied himself and saw a black shadow appear at a low altitude. The figure was not tall and looked like a teenager. Vaguely, the appearance of the figure seemed a little immature. At that moment, Nyetian caught sight of the figure and exclaimed, "Earth Chief." The person who appeared at the critical moment was none other than the inescapable Net's Earth Chief. At the same time, Niedao's figure also appeared. He struck out with his palm and forced Zhonglai back. Inescapable Net. Nangong Dushio suddenly reacted and looked at Earth Chief's figure with flickering eyes. He hadn't expected Earth Chief to appear at this time. Hoi Jioshin and Zhonglai were also stunned. They exchanged a glance with each other, and their expressions became somewhat complicated. Earth Chief's figure flashed over to Cher's side, and then he actually knelt down on one knee and spoke respectfully. "Your Highness, I'm late." Cher ignored him and looked anxiously at Mo Rushi, asking, "Sister Rushi, are you all right?" Mo Rushi let out a long breath and gently shook her head, indicating that she was fine. It had to be said that Earth Chief had come at the right time. "Your Highness." Hoi Jioshin and the others saw Earth Chief's attitude towards Cher and were stunned. Their expressions were extremely ugly. They couldn't understand why Cher would be associated with the inescapable Net. Even Earth Chief, one of the 2 Supremes, was kneeling to her. Could the inescapable Net be related to the Netherworld Emperor? Hoi Jioshin's eyes narrowed, and he was puzzled. Boom! And at this moment, the space around them trembled as a black-robed silhouette directly descended. This silhouette was about the same size as Earth Kuei. In fact, it was even shorter than Earth Kuei. However, the aura exuding from it was incomparably majestic. Just standing there, it was like a vast ocean, unfathomably deep. The arrival of this figure stunned everyone once again. This person's aura was extremely powerful, not any weaker than Hoi Jioshin and the others. He was even more terrifying than Earth Chief. "Tian Chief greets Your Highness." That person's face was hidden in the black robe, and his face could not be seen clearly. However, When he landed, he bowed respectfully to Schwer. Tian Chief, everyone exclaimed. They didn't expect the person to be Tian Chief of the inescapable net. The inescapable net's heaven and earth chief had appeared at the same time, so the situation had taken a subtle turn. Judging from Tian Chief's aura, his strength should be on par with Huajioshan and the others. The most amazing thing was that Tian Chief and Earth Chief's attitude toward Cher was that of a servant serving her master. Yet Tian's body trembled slightly. He suddenly felt that he couldn't maintain his strength anymore. In the blink of an eye, his body suddenly shrank and turned into a human. At this moment, he was covered in blood and his aura was extremely weak. Only his eyes were as resolute as ever. Tian Chief, how have you been? At this time, Huajioshan took a step forward with a faint smile and took the initiative to speak. Lord President, Earth Chief, and I are going to take Her Highness away. Is that all right? Tian Chief replied coldly. His voice was cold and extremely domineering. Huajioshan and Jianglai looked at each other and smiled. They said in unison, "Of course it's all right. You can leave now." Cher had the meridians of 3 lives, so she had an extraordinary connection to the Emperor of the Netherworld. However, she clearly wasn't the focus of Huajioshan and Jianglai's apprehension right now, so it wasn't a bad idea to let her go. The inescapable net could be dealt with in the future, but Tian and Mo Rushi had to die today. No. However, before Huajioshan and Jianglai could finish speaking, Cher took a step forward and looked cold at Tian Chief and Earth Chief. She growled, "I won't go with you, Her Highness." Tian Chief frowned and said solemnly, "You've been wandering outside for too long. Please return with me." Cher's beautiful eyes flickered. Her gaze flashed across Tian and Mo Rushi. She said, "If Tian and Sister Rushi don't leave, then I won't leave either." Tian Chief and Earth Chief looked at each other with ugly expressions. "You have to save them." Snow took another step forward, speaking in a forceful tone that was rare for her. Huajioshan and Jianglai were stunned at the same time. If Tian Chief and Earth Chief really wanted to save them, then it would be troublesome. Tian Chief alone was enough to deal with Huajioshan or Jianglai, and Earth Chief was no weaker than Nangang Duxiu. If it was 3 against 3, Huajioshan's side didn't have much chance of winning. "Her Highness, please don't make things difficult for me." Tian Chief bowed slightly and maintained a respectful tone. "I'm not making things difficult for you." Cher's eyes flickered. She actually said in a cold tone, "I'm ordering you." Her voice wasn't loud and even a little gentle, but it resounded in the air with an extremely domineering tone. Cher had the temperament of a ruler. When she turned cold, this temperament became even more obvious. Tian Chief and Earth Chief shuddered at the same time. They didn't expect Cher to say such a thing. The two fell silent for a moment and seemed to exchange opinions. Then, they each took a step forward and stood in front of Tian and Mo Rushi, confronting Huajioshan and the others. "Tian Chief, Earth Chief, what is the meaning of this?" Huajioshan was startled and said solemnly, "Is this how I let you go? Is this how you appreciate my kindness?" Tian Chief's eyes flickered in the darkness, and he said sternly, "Tian Chief has no choice but to obey Her Highness' order." The words, "I have no choice but to comply," showed Tian Kuei's determination to intervene. Chapter 1529. In the sky, Tian Kuei took a step forward and released his aura slightly. A strange power appeared in the void, like dark clouds, surging in the space. Tian Kuei, Calamity Nine's heart suddenly sank, and the evil energy of extreme circulating around her body immediately became restless. He didn't expect that the heaven and earth duo of the inescapable net would actually listen to a little girl. In an instant, the atmosphere became tense. The few peak experts had yet to make a move, but the violent forces in the air had already begun to collide with each other. The violent forces collided with each other, and ear-piercing explosions rang out in the air, as if the heavens and earth were wailing. "Lord Guild Leader, if you wish to fight, Tian Kuei will accompany you." Tian Kuei was not afraid of Huajioshan at all. He took a step forward and leaped into the air with his average-sized body. He was extremely powerful. Tian Kuei, do you really want to be manipulated by a little girl? Huajioshan said coldly. His entire body was surging with cold intent, but his eyes were locked onto Mo Rushi and Nie Tian. At this moment, the people he wanted to kill the most were Mo Rushi and Nie Tian, especially Mo Rushi and the child in her womb. The descendants of a god-fiend essence embryo and a sage's body were too terrifying. They had to be eliminated. 9 gods of calamity, please watch your words. Tian Kuei's body trembled slightly. He was clearly disgusted by Huajioshan calling Cher a little girl. He said in a deep voice, I heard that the sacred president possesses the legendary 6th special pupil, the 9 pupils. Tian Kuei really wants to see just how powerful the legendary 9 pupils are. Tian Kuei's words were cold and disdainful, directly provoking him. Sky Leader, do you really think this guild leader is afraid of you? Calamity 9 frowned, his expression as dark as water. He naturally knew that Tian Kuei was a super genius who had stepped into the 9th floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda. It had been several thousand years since he had last seen Tian Kuei, so he didn't know just how strong the latter had become. A person who could step into the 9th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda was definitely not that simple. As the president of the Holy Parliament, Huajioshan understood the terror of the Glazed Demon Pagoda better than anyone else. Because of this, he was rather wary of Tian Kuei. He would rather face Nie Dao than face Tian Kuei. But now that Tian Kuei was being so forceful, if he retreated, it would be a disgrace to his status as the guild leader of Sacred Light. Then make your move. Tian Kuei smiled cold and took another step forward in a domineering manner. At this moment, Nie Tian, who was watching the battle from the side, could not help but frown. He felt very strange. 9 gods was clearly stronger than Jiang Lai, so why would Tian Chief take the initiative to challenge 9 gods Hua? From the looks of Tian Kuei's intentions, it seemed like he couldn't wait to fight the 9 gods of Hua. Arrogant. Huajioshan was infuriated by Tian Chief's insolence. She let out a low roar and her eyes flickered slightly. Immediately, a wave of evil energy of extreme Yin was released and condensed into a sharp black blade in the air. It abruptly lashed out, its sharpness filling the world and almost cutting space itself apart. Whoosh! The black blade was extremely sharp, and an ear-piercing sound came from the void. The sharp aura shot tens of thousands of meters away. It was clear that Huajioshan had spared no effort in this attack, hoping to intimidate Tian Kuei and force him to retreat. Wings of the Sky Demon, open! Tian Kuei shouted in a low voice in the face of Huajioshan's fatal attack. His body swayed slightly, and 2 black vortexes appeared behind him. They instantly transformed into a pair of black wings that were thousands of meters wide when spread. In the next moment, the wings of the Sky Demon suddenly folded and a strange vortex condensed. It was like an invincible abyss that surged between heaven and earth, appearing extremely evil. The black blade arrived in an instant and struck the strange vortex. A shocking scene appeared. Boom! In the blink of an eye, a giant black hand stretched out from the strange vortex. It suddenly stretched open and tore through the void, causing an endless space-time storm to surge out. That giant black hand was extremely terrifying. It was not an illusion, but a real entity. It had black bones and black skin, and it emitted a dark aura. The giant black hand was completely unafraid of the space-time storm. It suddenly tightened and crushed the black blade, then swallowed it whole. The other peak experts' eyes narrowed when they saw this scene, and they all gasped in shock. That giant black hand was too terrifying. Just the dark aura that surged around it made people feel suffocated. The giant black hand seemed to represent darkness itself. It was extremely terrifying. Huajioshan retreated rapidly. She was stunned at first, but then she thought of something and cried out in shock. She was speechless. The hand of a netherworld emperor. Nie Dao's voice sounded at almost the same time, full of panic. The hand of the Netherworld Emperor? Tian was slightly stunned. He did not know what it was, but judging from the reaction of these peak experts, it was not hard to guess that the hand of the Netherworld Emperor must be something very terrifying. The Netherworld Emperor was a person that many peak experts had mentioned before. It seemed that this person had a special relationship with Cher. But up until now, Tian still did not know who the Netherworld Emperor was. Tian Kue, no wonder you address the girl with the meridian of 3 lives as Her Highness. So you are from the ancient Ming race. Hua Jioshin calmed down a little and immediately understood something. She roared angrily and looked at Nie Dao at the same time. Nie Dao, Tian Kue is a remnant of the ancient Ming race. Do you still want to work with him? Nie Dao was slightly stunned, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He took a step forward and said solemnly, I have no choice but to protect my family. The ancient Ming race was an extremely ancient race that had existed even longer than the Dragon Rebel race. The ancient Ming race was a taboo race that had another name in the 9 realms, the heaven-punishing ancient race. Everyone thought that the ancient Ming race had been completely annihilated hundreds of thousands of years ago. Who would have thought that there were still survivors? The ancient Ming race was a taboo race that was viewed as an enemy by all forces. But in order to protect his family, Nie Dao did not hesitate to work with Tian Kue. At least for now, Tian Kue had no intention of harming Nie Tian and the others. In fact, he was even protecting Nie Tian. Nie Dao, you must understand that you are making an enemy of the entire world. Hua Jioshin's body trembled, and a terrifying chill radiated from his body. His violent roar reverberated through the sky. I will do anything for my family. Nie Dao responded cold, but his eyes were filled with the most resolute determination. Nie Tian's heart trembled when he heard Nie Dao's words. He felt extremely proud to have a grandfather like this. Hua Jioshin, your 9 pupils are only SOSO. At this moment, Tian Kue's arrogant voice reverberated through the sky. It was extremely ear-piercing. Tian Kue, a cold light flashed through Hua Jioshin's dark eyes. He uttered the 2 words Tian Kue and said in a deep voice, What are you trying to do? What benefit does the inescapable net get from opposing the Holy Parliament? Hua Jioshin's imposing manner had clearly weakened, and there was a hint of compromise in his voice. Tian Kue could use the hand of the Netherworld Emperor, which was something Hua Jioshin hadn't expected. The power of the hand of the Netherworld Emperor had exceeded Hua Jioshin's expectations. If he fought with all his strength and used his stronger trump card, he had a 70% chance of destroying the hand of the Netherworld Emperor, but he would have to pay a certain price. For Hua Jioshin, this wasn't worth it. Chapter 1530. Hua Jioshin, are you trying to negotiate with me? Tian Kue sensed that Hua Jioshin's aura had weakened and couldn't help but smile playfully. He was a smart person and knew when to stop. Hua Jioshin had been famous for a long time and could be considered his senior. She definitely had a trump card that ordinary people couldn't imagine, since she could hold the position of the sacred president for hundreds of thousands of years. It wouldn't be good if she was pushed too far. Tian Kei had used the hand of the Underworld Emperor to gain the upper hand. Now that he had achieved his goal, he could temporarily restrain himself. Tian Kue, what do you want? Hua Jioshin said solemnly, tacitly agreeing. Her Highness hopes that Nie Tian and Lady Ru Shi are alive, so I want to protect their lives. Tian Kue smiled and said directly, Tian Kue, do you think that's possible? Hua Jioshin smiled cold and said solemnly, the god-fiend nascent embryo, the body of a sage, and the seed of disaster in the belly of a sage. It's impossible for you to protect all of them. Then let's fight. Before Hua Jioshin could finish, Nie Dao roared angrily and took a step forward in a threatening manner. Now that the heaven and earth duo were here, he needed to borrow their strength to demonstrate his might to Hua Jioshin. Tian Kue, Nie Dao. Hua Jioshin trembled slightly and hesitated. Tian Kue's strength had exceeded Hua Jioshin's expectations and turned the situation delicate. President, why are we in such a hurry? Nangong Dushio suddenly transmitted at this time and said, "We can make a deal with the god fiend nascent embryo kid and have him open the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda for us." Oh, Calamity 9 furrowed her brows slightly. Then she squeezed out a cold smile on her dark face. She murmured inwardly, "I almost forgot. The fiend god nascent embryo just absorbed a glazed demon pagoda clone and almost entered the 10th floor. It might be a good idea to use his talent to open the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda." The glazed demon pagoda was the ultimate treasure of the sacred parliament. But so far, only the 9th floor of the pagoda had been opened. No one had stepped into the 10th floor and above, so it couldn't be opened. It was rumored that the glazed demon pagoda was an immemorial holy artifact that contained the secret of breaking through the deity realm and advancing to the saint realm. 9 gods Hua had studied the glazed demon pagoda for tens of thousands of years, and his greatest trump card was not the 9 pupils, but the glazed body. Unfortunately, his glazed body was only a half-finished product. Because he could not enter the 10th level of the glazed demon pagoda, he could not cultivate his glazed body to the perfect state. The reason why the Holy Parliament had chosen so many leaders from the 9 domains was, of course, not to nurture talents, but to use the talents of these geniuses to open the higher levels of the glazed demon pagoda. The connection between the main body of the glazed demon pagoda and the avatar was very tight. As long as a martial artist stepped onto the 10th floor of the avatar, the 10th floor of the main body of the glazed demon pagoda would also open. Hua Jioshin possessed the glazed demon pagoda's main body, so she naturally didn't care about the glazed demon pagoda's clone. If the glazed demon pagoda can open the 10th floor and I can enter it to cultivate, my glazed body will definitely improve by another level, Hua Jioshin thought to herself. Her abyss-like body began to sway slightly. As long as the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda was opened, Jioshin was confident that his strength would improve by another level, and he might even be able to reach the legendary Sage Realm. As long as he could reach the Sage Realm, would he be afraid of the god fiend nascent embryo? Hua Jioshin was willing to compromise for the chance to reach the Sage Realm. Moreover, the current situation forced him to compromise. Lord President, the Nye family's god confinement fetus has an embryo period of 3 years, while the god fiend nascent embryo has an embryo period of 9 years. Based on this, the child of the god fiend nascent embryo and the sage physique will definitely have an embryo period of more than 10 years. At this time, Nangong Dushio's voice sounded again. She said sinisterly, "Even if this girl is allowed to live, it will take at least 10 years for the child in her womb to be born. During this period of time, we can still take action. Normally, humans would gestate for 10 months, but some special innate embryos would have a very long embryo period. The god confinement fetus had 3 years, while the god fiend nascent embryo had 9 years. If the child of Nyetian and Mo Rushi was born, the embryo period would probably be even longer, at least 10 years. 10 years was enough to change many things." Hua Jioshin nodded solemnly. He had already made his decision. "Tian Chief, Nye Dao," Hua Jioshin said in a cold voice, "the meridian of 3 lives, the god fiend nascent embryo, and the sage physique. I can let these 3 live, but the child in the womb of the sage physique must die." "Impossible." Before Hua Jioshin could finish speaking, Nye Tian roared furiously, "That is my child. What right do you have to decide his life or death?" "Hua Jioshin, that child is of the Nye family's bloodline. Even if I, Nye Dao, die, I will not let you harm a hair on him." Nye Dao's furious and firm voice resounded. "What right do I have?" Hua Jioshin smiled coldly. Then he looked at Nye Tian with cold eyes and said solemnly, "Do you know that the god fiend nascent embryo in your body is already a taboo? The child born from the god fiend nascent embryo and the sage physique is the taboo of all taboo. Whether this child has the right to live or not is not something you can decide. Taboo." Nye Tian had an angry expression as he growled, "Why is it a taboo? Who made this rule?" The child in Mo Rushi's womb was Nye Tian's flesh and blood. How could he allow someone else to decide his child's life or death just because of a taboo? Although Nyetian wasn't ready to become a father yet, since this child had appeared, he would fulfill his responsibility as a father. He would use his life to protect Emorushi, to protect his child. Why is it a taboo? Huajoshin smiled cold and then said solemnly, because he is too powerful. This world cannot contain him. Bullshit, Nyetian roared furiously. A person who is too powerful had to be killed. How could there be such a logic in this world? Huajoshin, Nyedao, will not take a step back no matter what. If you want to kill this child, you'll have to step over my dead body first. Nyedao's expression was furious. He took a step forward and released his aura wildly. Nyedao. At this moment, Huajoshin suddenly shouted. Her ethereal voice suddenly became louder. Do you really want to protect this child? I must. Nyedao replied solemnly. Nyetian's eyes flickered. He could see that Huajoshin was about to compromise and negotiate. The kid called Nyetian. Suddenly, Huajoshin turned around and locked her cold gaze on Nyetian. She said solemnly, if you want to protect your own child, I will give you a chance. Boom. Huajoshin waved her hand as soon as she finished speaking. A ball of glazed light surged out and instantly condensed into a tower of light. It was the glazed demon pagoda. The glazed demon pagoda. Nyetian's brows sank and his eyes flickered. He didn't know why Huajoshin had released the glazed demon pagoda at this time. The others were also stunned. They didn't understand what Huajoshin meant. At this moment, Huajoshin had released an avatar of the glazed demon pagoda and not the main body. As long as Nyetian could reach the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda would open. Nyetian, kid, you've already entered the glazed demon pagoda. Huajoshin let out a strange laugh and said in a low voice, I will give you a chance. As long as you can reach the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda and above, the child in the womb of the sage body can survive. The 12th floor. Everyone was stunned at first when they heard Huajoshin's words. Then, they exclaimed in unison with expressions of disbelief. Chapter 1531. The 12th floor. Everyone's expression turned sluggish as soon as Huajoshin finished speaking. They all wore expressions of disbelief. No one had expected Huajoshin to propose such harsh conditions. Countless geniuses had entered the glazed demon pagoda over the past hundreds of thousands of years, but the 9th floor was the limit. No one had ever entered the 10th floor until now. Even someone as brilliant as Nia Fenghua, Tian Kuei, ultimately stopped at the 9th floor. Even Emorushi, who was known as the #1 martial physique in all of history, felt the pressure of the martial physique's limits when she entered the 9th floor. Above the 12th floor was an impossible condition. Nangang Dushio was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. She only wanted Nyetian to attempt the 10th floor, but she didn't expect Huajoshin to be so greedy and ask for above the 12th floor. Tian Kuei's figure also clearly stiffened. He had entered the glazed demon pagoda before and naturally knew how terrifying it was. The 9th floor was the limit, and it was almost impossible to enter the 10th floor and beyond. Huajoshin, do you think this is an opportunity? Niet Dao finally reacted. His aged face was filled with extreme anger as he growled. The highest record of the glazed demon pagoda is the 9th floor, and you want above the 12th floor. You are clearly deliberately making things difficult for me. I don't want such an opportunity. So what if I'm deliberately making things difficult for you? Huajoshin smiled cold and said loudly, the person you want to protect is a taboo among taboo. I'm only letting him enter the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. This is already the greatest concession I can make. Concession? At this time, Tian Kuei suddenly sneered and said solemnly, Huajoshin, don't treat everyone as fools. I know exactly what you want to do. You just want to use Nyetian's talent to open a higher floor of the glazed demon pagoda for you. Oh, Tian Kuei's words pointed out Huajoshin's goal. The latter couldn't help but be surprised, but she soon calmed down and said solemnly, how do you know? Don't forget that I once entered the glazed demon pagoda and even saw the glazed demon pagoda's artifact spirit. Tian Kuei smiled coldly and said, "If I'm not wrong, your 9 revolution glass art has reached a bottleneck. You want to use Nie Tian to open the 10th level of the glazed demon pagoda, and then enter the 10th level to cultivate and absorb the pure glazed chi to help you break through the bottleneck of the 9 revolution glaze technique. This is your plan, right?" Tian Kuei bluntly stated 9 gods to his thoughts. Hua Jioshin's abyss-like body trembled slightly. Her 9 eyes were like a wolf's, ready to erupt with terrifying power at any moment. So what if I am? It was easy to imagine how furious 9 gods' calamity was after his scheme was exposed in front of everyone. But he suppressed his anger and said solemnly, "Tian Kuei, since you know that I cultivate the 9 revolution glass technique, then you should also know that a mere hand of the Netherworld Emperor cannot stop me." Hua Jioshin's body shuddered as soon as he heard Zhang Jioshin's violent voice. His entire body unleashed boundless glass energy, which condensed into a gigantic glass body that was tens of thousands of meters long behind him. It unleashed a tremendous amount of power. The glazed body disappeared in a flash, clearly just to intimidate. Hua Jioshin sneered and said indifferently, "To put it bluntly, if I use my glazed body, the 3 of you will definitely hate me even if you work together." 9 gods' calamity. Nie Dao's old face suddenly darkened. He didn't expect 9 gods' calamity to have such a powerful trump card. The heaven and earth duo Kuei exchanged glances, their auras clearly weakening a little. At this moment, Nie Tian couldn't help but frown. Although the glazed body had only appeared for an instant, its aura had shocked him. Nie Dao's god-restraining fetus and Tian Kuei's hand of the Netherworld Emperor were indeed weaker than the glazed body. 9 gods' calamity. At this time, Tian Kuei suddenly sneered and said, "If you use the glazed body, I'm afraid you'll also suffer a great backlash." So what if I do? 9 gods' calamity didn't hide it at all and said in a cold voice, "If I use the glazed body, I'll suffer a bit of backlash at most. At worst, I'll just go into seclusion for a few hundred years and recover after that. But you'll have to pay with your lives." The 9 revolution glaze technique did have a very strong backlash on a cultivator's martial body. Only after cultivating it to the 5th revolution and above would the backlash of the glazed body disappear. Unfortunately, 9 gods' calamity was stuck at the 4th revolution of the 9 revolution glaze technique and had to endure the backlash of the glazed body every day. If he used the glazed body, the backlash would increase and might even damage his martial Dao foundation. This was also why he never used the glazed body. Only by entering the 10th level of the glazed pagoda could he break through the bottleneck of the 9 revolution glaze technique. Jiang Lai's eyes couldn't help but flicker as he listened to their conversation. Of course, he wanted to see 9 gods' calamity and Tian Kuei fight. When that happened, both sides would definitely suffer and he would be able to reap the benefits. However, both sides were relatively calm and obviously wouldn't act rashly. 9 gods' calamity, you're so treacherous. Yet Dao's expression was dark as he said sternly, "So you want to use the fiend god origin embryo to open the glazed pagoda for you. This way, your strength will definitely increase, and you might even have a chance to break through to the sage realm. When you're strong enough, will you still be able to tolerate the wind and rain alliance?" Mph. 9 gods' calamity smiled sinisterly and said in a deep voice, "Nie Dao, you're not that stupid after all. But so what if you know the truth? Do you still have a choice?" Her cold voice resounded through the air and exploded in the ears of Nie Tian and the others like a clap of thunder. 9 gods' calamity was right. Nie Tian and the others had no other choice. Nie Tian's expression was as dark as still water. His gaze swept across Mo Rushi, Cher, Nie Dao, and the others, and his eyes gradually became determined. Nie Dao had already done too much for him. He couldn't let the former risk his life for him. Nie Tian knew that if a battle really broke out, Nie Dao would most likely die. Even a heaven and earth duo would not be spared. The price 9 gods' calamity had to pay was just to cultivate in seclusion, which was relatively small. The final winner would be another force, the Xingtian Alliance. Nyetian wasn't willing to see this happen. He had to agree to Nine Gods Calamity's conditions. Nine Gods Calamity, I agree. Nyetian took a step forward as soon as he thought of this. His eyes were sharp and firm. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's gazes locked onto Nyetian, astonishment and shock filling their faces. The 12th floor of the glazed pagoda. Nyetian had really agreed. Nyetian, you can't agree. Nyedao took a step forward and shouted in shock. Mo Rushi and Cher's little faces froze. They didn't know what to say. Grandfather, believe me. Nyetian suddenly raised his head and looked at Nyedao. His eyes were calm and firm, containing an almost tyrannical confidence. Grandfather. Nyedao's heart trembled when he heard this form of address. If Nyetian was willing to recognize him as his grandfather, then everything he had done before was worth it. Nyetian, have you thought it through? At this moment, Nine Gods Calamity smiled sinisterly and looked very playful. That was the 12th floor of the glazed pagoda. Even if Nyetian had the fiend god origin embryo, he couldn't enter it. Nyetian let out a long breath, and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Yes, I have. He had entered the glazed pagoda before, so he naturally knew how strange it was. Chapter 1532. High up in the sky above Muyu City, the glazed demon pagoda floated and constantly emitted glazed halos. The halos filled the space within a radius of several thousand meters and flowed with a mysterious aura. At this moment, no one's eyes were on the glazed demon pagoda. Instead, they were locked onto Nyetian. Nyetian sat cross-legged in midair. After a while, he stood up. The bloodstains on his body had completely disappeared, and his aura had returned to normal. However, his face was still slightly pale. The dragon form he had just used in a fit of rage had caused him to consume a massive amount of his devil essence. At the same time, his blood chi had also been severely damaged. What a terrifying recovery ability. The others' eyes flickered when they saw Nyetian stand up. Previously, Nyetian's chi and blood were almost exhausted. However, he had recovered in less than half an hour. The strength of his martial body was truly terrifying. This kid is too terrifying. Apart from his fiend god nascent embryo, he also has a powerful dragon vein and has even fused with the twin sovereign flames. What's even stranger is that there's a very stable power flowing through his body. This power seems to be even more terrifying than the glazed energy. Nine Gods' cold gaze roamed over Nyetian. The killing intent in her eyes intensified as she said in a cold voice, "This kid is too terrifying. We can't let him grow." At this moment, Nine Gods had made up her mind to kill Nyetian. Nyetian was too terrifying. He was only a low god at the moment, but Nine Gods already felt apprehensive. Once he grew to the level of a paramount god, he might not have to fear Nine Gods. Can we begin? Nyetian's gaze was as sharp as a sword as he spoke indifferently. Of course. Nine Gods hinted that Nyetian could enter the glazed demon pagoda. Grandfather, sixth uncle, Rushi, Cher, Lord Sky Chief, Lord Earth Chief. Nyetian nodded slightly and swept his gaze across the others. He greeted them one by one and said, "I'm going in." The others nodded solemnly, but their expressions were extremely grave. The 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda was an impossible mission. Kid, you only need to reach the 10th floor. As for the conditions that you haven't fulfilled, we can discuss other conditions. Not only do I want to open the glazed demon pagoda, but I also want the Wind and Cloud Alliance to pay a heavy price. I want them to leave the realms and be exiled to other planes. Huijoshin's eyes flashed as she thought coldly. As long as Nyetian could enter the 10th floor, he would be very satisfied. But if Nyetian couldn't fulfill the conditions, 9 deities who could raise other conditions. He had already made up his mind. He was going to chase the Wind and Cloud Alliance out of the realm and banish them to the plane world. Even if the 9 Gods of Calamity did nothing, the Wind and Cloud Alliance that had sunk into the plane world would fall into complete decline in less than 100 years. For martial practitioners, planar worlds and realms were completely different cultivation environments. How could they be mentioned in the same breath? Nie Tian did not know what Hua Jiushin was thinking, but he knew that he had to reach the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. In the next moment, Nie Tian no longer hesitated. His figure moved and turned into a stream of light, entering the glazed demon pagoda directly. Once again entering the glazed demon pagoda and feeling the dense glazed qi, Nie Tian was not excited at all. Instead, he felt immense grief and indignation. He had too many things on his shoulders. This time, he absolutely could not fail. At this moment, everyone was staring at the dot of light in the glazed demon pagoda with burning eyes. Even though Nie Dao and the others felt that Nie Tian had no chance of entering the 12th floor, they still held onto a great hope in their hearts. Mo Rushi's eyes flickered and her beautiful eyes trembled. Her crystalline tears reflected the glazed demon pagoda, making her entire being look beautiful and pitiful. Sister Rushi, I believe that Nie Tian will definitely succeed. Cher gently grabbed Mo Rushi's hand and said indifferently. Her beautiful eyes were clear and firm. She had always had confidence in Nie Tian, no matter the situation. Under countless gazes, the dot of light in the glazed demon pagoda rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached the 6th floor. Entering the 6th floor, Nie Tian maintained a very fast speed. What terrifying speed! Tian Kuei's eyes trembled. This was the fastest speed he had ever seen. It far surpassed his previous speed. At this moment, he realized that Nie Tian's talent was even more terrifying than he had imagined. When Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu saw Nie Tian's speed, the hope in their hearts gradually grew. Godfiend nascent embryo brat, faster, faster. You will definitely open the glazed demon pagoda for this president. Hua Jiushin's pitch-black eyes flickered with a strange light. He could not help but become excited. Inside the glazed demon pagoda, Nie Tian's figure continued to madly rush upwards. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to keep rushing forward. At this moment, Nie Tian seemed to have forgotten everything. He recklessly rushed upwards. His body was almost numb. He could not feel the surging of the glazed qi, nor could he feel the enormous pressure of the glazed demon pagoda. After a short while, Nie Tian suddenly felt an abnormally powerful force pressing down on him from above. His body froze abruptly. He was actually unable to withstand this force and was forced to take a few steps back. Nie Tian, outside the demon pagoda, Mo Rushi saw Nie Tian suddenly move downwards and could not help but exclaim, "So powerful!" At the same time, Tian Kuei and the others exclaimed in shock. Their eyes became slightly dull. Just now, Nie Tian had actually climbed to the 9th floor in one go. At this moment, he was already standing at the edge of the 10th floor and was rushing towards it. The terror of Nie Tian had exceeded the expectations of all the peak experts. Back then, Tian Kuei had spent half a day to barely enter the 9th floor, but Nie Tian had rushed to the 9th floor in just a few minutes. This was really too terrifying. Nie Tian, the 9th floor is guarded by an artifact spirit. Can you rush over? Tian Kuei's eyes narrowed, and his voice was trembling in his heart. Back then, he had encountered the artifact spirit of the glazed demon pagoda on the 9th floor. This was a very terrifying guy. At this moment, the light spot in the glazed demon pagoda kept rushing upwards, but was constantly knocked back. Again and again, the light spot did not seem to know fatigue. It did not stop. It did not give up. Nie Tian. Mo Rushi looked at the light spot moving up and down, and the surging tears in her eyes slowly flowed down. At this moment, this blurry image was forever imprinted in Mo Rushi's heart and could never be erased. After an unknown period of time, no one knew how many times Nie Tian had failed, but he kept rushing with all his might and showed no signs of stopping. This kid's perseverance is really terrifying. Hua Jiushin looked at the light spot and felt a deep fear in his heart. If his face was revealed, he would definitely be extremely embarrassed, even if he had a skeletal face. Nie Tian's talent is already a top-notch monster, and his perseverance is even more astonishing. Tian Kuei's expression was also extremely shocked, and he said in a heavy heart, "This person will definitely stand at the peak of the martial path in the future." Talent and perseverance were the two biggest factors that determined a martial artist's success. Nietion's talent and perseverance were monstrous among monstrous geniuses. It would be unreasonable if such a person did not succeed. He stopped. At this moment, Nangong Dusho suddenly let out an abnormally ear-piercing cry. Chapter 1533. Outside the glazed demon pagoda, everyone saw that the light spot in the pagoda suddenly stopped. They couldn't help but be stunned, and their eyes became puzzled. With Nietion's perseverance, he absolutely wouldn't stop unless something else happened in the pagoda. At the same time, in the glazed demon pagoda, Nietion's figure stopped, and he looked at the strange face in front of him. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. At this moment, Nietion's body was already a bloody mess, and his bones could be seen from many wounds. He forcefully rushed to the 10th level, and the pressure in the glazed demon pagoda became stronger and stronger, almost tearing his body apart. But Nietion didn't give up at all, because he could only exchange his life for the life of his loved ones by fighting with his life. Nietion felt that there was an invisible barrier in the space leading to the 10th level. It was extremely strange, and no matter what attack he used, it was completely ineffective. The invisible barrier seemed to be able to absorb all power, and it couldn't be broken. However, just a moment ago, the invisible barrier suddenly trembled, and a stream of liquefied, glassy energy appeared, condensing into a bizarre face in front of Nietion. This face was only the size of a baby's palm. It was 30% human and 70% cat. It didn't look fierce at all, and it was actually very cute. A pair of sapphire-like eyes flickered, and it was quick-witted and quick-witted. Nietion looked at the face in front of him, and he was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. "Little doll, are you done?" Suddenly, the kitten actually spoke. Its voice was a little sharp, and it was also a voice between a human and a cat. It was very strange. You are." Nietion was stunned on the spot, and his mouth was wide open, but he couldn't speak. "You don't know me?" The kitten made a strange sound and seemed very surprised. Then, he put on a very arrogant face and said loudly, "I am the 9th device spirit of the glazed demon pagoda, Lord Nine-tailed Chinchilla." "The 9th device spirit? Nine-tailed Chinchilla?" Nietion was stunned, and his expression was even more astonished. This kitten was the 9th artifact spirit. Could it be that the glazed demon pagoda had many other artifact spirits? Nietion had heard of artifact spirits before. However, it was strange for a sacred artifact to have so many artifact spirits. "Little doll, give up. The 9th level of the glazed demon pagoda is already the limit of a martial artist talent. You can't enter the 10th level." At this time, the 9-tailed demon cat suddenly extended a fat paw and waved its hand, signaling Nietion to leave. As he spoke, the 9-tailed chinchilla's entire body was revealed. Its small body was not big, but it was very fat. It looked like a meatball. Its long tail dragged in the air, and it was several times longer than its body. The body of this strange cat was like the Jean de Bayo of the cat world. Nietion glanced at the fat cat and was puzzled. This little guy clearly only had one tail, yet it insisted on calling itself 9-tailed chinchilla. It was really strange. Moreover, the fat cat was no different from an ordinary kitten. It was not related to a dragon at all. The only strange thing was that its face looked a little like a human. "Why?" Following that, Nietion became cold and said solemnly, "I must enter the 10th level." According to the fat cat, the 9th level of the glazed demon pagoda was the limit. Then, why did it have to be designed as 18 levels? It should have been designed as 9 levels. There must be a huge secret hidden above the 10th level. "Must you enter?" 9-tailed chinchilla let out a strange cry. Its paw held its chin, and it was in deep thought. After pondering for a long time, it said, "Little doll, you attacked me 763 times just now. Why don't you attack me 763 times again? Maybe I will consider letting you pass." "Huh?" Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly, and he said in astonishment, That invisible barrier just now was formed by you. Of course. Nine-tailed chinchilla chuckled. Its body moved, and it circled around Yetion. Suddenly, it landed on his shoulder and said, "Little doll, your current martial body has reached its limit. If you attack it 763 times again, I'm afraid you will die in the glazed demon pagoda. For a warrior with such talent and perseverance like you to die in the demon pagoda, I'm really a little reluctant." "Is that so?" Suddenly, Niet Tian Lung laughed, and then a sword intent gushed out from his palm, turning into a sword net, directly imprisoning Nine-tailed Chinchilla. Since the barrier just now was formed by Nine-tailed Chinchilla, as long as he controlled it, wouldn't he be able to enter the 10th level? In the next moment, Niet Tian's figure moved, and he directly rushed to the 10th level. Bang! Immediately, a muffled sound was heard, and Niet Tian was knocked back again. "Little doll, you're too young." Nine-tailed Chinchilla's figure appeared again, and the sword net didn't imprison him at all. Nine-tailed Chinchilla chuckled and said, "Playing tricks in front of me. Childish." "Nine-tailed Chinchilla, what do you want?" Niet Tian's eyes were gloomy, and he said cold, "What do I have to do for you to let me enter the 10th level? Why do you want to enter the 10th level?" Nine-tailed Chinchilla's face became serious, but it asked, "Little doll, why do you want to enter the 10th level?" Niet Tian thought for a moment, and without hiding anything, he explained the matter. "So that's how it is." Nine-tailed Chinchilla lay on Niet Tian's shoulder and actually sobbed, and said with a trembling voice, "You're desperate for your wife and child. It's really touching." Niet Tian was speechless. He didn't know if the fat cat was really touched, or if it was acting for fun. He didn't know that the fat cat was so emotional. "Niet Tian, if you want to enter the 10th level or even higher, it's actually very simple." Before Niet Tian could react, Nine-tailed Chinchilla suddenly stopped crying and actually laughed and said, "As long as you can bring me out of here, I will let you enter the 10th level, and I can even bring you to higher levels." "Bring you out of here?" Niet Tian was stunned, and he didn't quite understand. "Yes." Nine-tailed Demon Cat chuckled and said, "Niet Tian, you are a person with a god-fiend origin embryo. As long as I enter your origin embryo space, I can escape the senses of the original body, and escape the control of the original body." Niet Tian was stunned again. Nine-tailed Demon Cat was both the original body and the original body, which made him even more confused. "Sigh." Nine-tailed Chinchilla suddenly sighed, and actually squeezed out another tear, and said, "Actually, I cry more than you, I was originally. Get to the point." Not waiting for Nine-tailed Chinchilla to continue, Niet Tian directly interrupted him. He could already see that this fat cat not only had a similar body shape to Jean de Bayo, but also had a similar personality. They both liked to talk. If he continued to talk, he didn't know how long he would be talking for. "All right, then I will get to the point." Nine-tailed Chinchilla stopped crying, chuckled, and said, "I am a ninth clone of Nine-tailed Chinchilla, but I don't want to be a clone anymore. I want to leave the glazed pagoda and explore the outside world. Only then will I not waste my supreme talent." Niet Tian frowned and finally understood. It turned out that this fat cat wasn't Nine-tailed Chinchilla's original body, but it was just a clone. However, because this clone had left the original body for too long, it gradually developed its own consciousness and actually wanted to leave the original body and become an independent existence. Needless to say, this fat cat was quite a dreamer. "Fat cat, you are betraying your original body. How can I believe your words?" Niet Tian thought for a while and said indifferently. Chapter 1534. In the glazed demon pagoda, the 10th floor suddenly became bright. Endless glaze halo gushed out and wrapped around Niet Tian tightly. In the blink of an eye, Niet Tian felt streams of mysterious energy flowing into his body, making him feel extremely comfortable. In the blink of an eye, his body that had reached its limit recovered and returned to its peak state. The sudden scene stunned Niet Tian. He was so shocked that he couldn't say a word. The glaze halo that he felt now was similar to the glazed chi from before, but it was pure, like the most original power, allowing his exhausted body to recover instantly. Nyetian, I will let you feel the benefits of the 10th floor first. If you want to enter, leave a soul imprint on me first. Nine-tailed chinchilla grinned. His fat ball-like body was very agile. He circled around Nyetian and stared at Nyetian with a face full of expectation. It seemed that this guy was really tired of staying in the glazed demon pagoda and couldn't wait to leave. If Nyetian left a soul imprint on him, it would be equivalent to signing a soul contract with Nyetian, which meant that he would become Nyetian's pet. As long as Nine-tailed Chinchilla made any strange moves, Nyetian could kill him directly with a thought. Nyetian's lips curled up slightly, and he said in his heart, "This fat cat took the initiative to ask me to leave a soul imprint. I didn't force it." Then, with a thought, a wave of soul power gushed out and entered Nine-tailed Chinchilla's body. "It's done." Nine-tailed Chinchilla immediately sensed it and smiled excitedly. His long tail circled in the air and entered the space of Nyetian's embryo. "Ha!" Nine-tailed Chinchilla laughed excitedly after entering the inner space of the celestial demon embryo. He was so excited that he rolled in the air and shouted happily, "This is the inner space of the celestial demon embryo. Even a main body can't enter. I am finally going to leave the glazed demon pagoda." The celestial demon embryo was the first ancient taboo. Its inner space was very secretive. Even Nine-tailed Chinchilla's main body couldn't enter. If Fat Cat entered the soul space of other warriors, Nine-tailed Chinchilla's main body could instantly pull him out. "Fat Cat, I can enter the 10th floor now, right?" Nyetian didn't give Fat Cat too much time to be happy and said directly, "Little kid, I am the noblest Nine-tailed Chinchilla in the world, not Fat Cat." Little Fat Cat pouted and muttered, "Seeing that you brought me out of the glazed demon pagoda, I won't argue with you for now. You can enter the 10th floor now, but you have to be quick. If our main body found out that someone had entered the 10th level, he would definitely go crazy with anger. I don't know what will happen then." "All right." Nyetian nodded solemnly. He looked at the higher part of the glazed demon pagoda and took a deep breath to relax himself. Of course, Nyetian knew that he was currently in a clone of the glazed demon pagoda. He wasn't sure if there were other artifact spirits after the 10th level. However, he speculated that even if there were other artifact spirits, they would probably be other clones of Nine-tailed Chinchilla. Since he could deal with Fat Cat's doppelganger, he should be able to deal with the other doppelgangers. However, he wasn't sure if the Nine-tailed Chinchilla's true form would appear. "Nyetian, don't be afraid. I haven't seen my main body for hundreds of thousands of years. That fat cat is probably asleep. By the time he notices, you will have almost reached the top." Fat Cat chuckled and said with a relaxed expression, "As long as you reach the top, take the heart of glaze and give it to me, then I will be the main body. Then, the two of us will join forces and conquer the 9 realms. We will become the legendary supreme martial artist. Only then will I not be wasting my supreme talent." "Ha ha!" Nyetian was speechless. He had to say that Fat Cat was thinking too far ahead. She was too optimistic. Whoosh! Nyetian let out a long breath of turbid air. Without any hesitation, he blurred into action and dashed towards the sky. This time, there were no more barriers to stop him, and he easily entered the 10th floor. In the blink of an eye, he was enveloped by an intense, glassy aura. Nyetian felt that every bone, every inch of muscle, and every drop of blood in his body was filled with glassy aura. Boom! At this moment, the surging blood chi in his body suddenly bloomed with a powerful aura. It was extremely sharp and rushed into the space. Nyetian was stunned for a second. Then he realized something and exclaimed, "I've leveled up." That's right. The moment Nyetian entered the 10th level, his martial body was crazily attacked by the glaze energy. His strength had advanced from the peak of lower deity to the early stage of middle deity. Previously, when he came out of the glazed demon pagoda for the first time, there were faint signs of him advancing to middle deity. Now that he was attacked by the glaze energy again, it was not strange that his strength advanced. However, his speed of advancement was too terrifying. In a day, he advanced 2 small realms and even broke through the bottleneck of lower deity to middle deity. It was so terrifying that it made people's hair stand on end. Ordinary martial artists usually needed thousands or even tens of thousands of years to advance 2 small realms in the god realm. What's more, many people were unable to break through the bottleneck of lower deity to middle deity in their entire lives. And these things that required tens of thousands of years were accomplished by Nietian in a day. This kind of speed was shocking to the world. At the same time, outside the glazed demon pagoda, everyone had been waiting impatiently. But when the dot of light rushed to the 10th level, everyone's eyes immediately burned with passion. Unbelievable. Nietian had actually stepped into the 10th level. Nietian has obtained the approval of the glazed demon pagoda's artifact spirit. Tian Chief's brows furrowed tightly, his eyes twitching violently. He had once seen the artifact spirit of the glazed demon pagoda, but unfortunately, he did not have the opportunity to set foot on the 10th level. The 10th level, he really reached the 10th level. At this moment, Huajioshin was so excited that he couldn't help but exclaim. It was as if he had gone mad. Nietian entering the 10th level would open the glazed demon pagoda's 10th level. This also meant that Huajioshin could enter the 10th level of the glazed demon pagoda's main body. His 9-revolution glaze technique would be able to break through the bottleneck. How could he not be excited? In the next moment, Huajioshin instantly calmed down and sensed that the 10th level of the glazed demon pagoda's main body had indeed opened. Bastard! However, it was also at this moment that a furious voice rang out in Huajioshin's mind, causing him to exclaim, "Nine-tailed chinchilla." This voice was very familiar to Huajioshin. It was the artifact spirit of the glazed demon pagoda, Nine-tailed chinchilla. At this moment, as Nine-tailed chinchilla's main body appeared, the glazed demon pagoda's main body also directly descended upon the clone and instantly replaced it. At this moment, Nietian was no longer in the glazed demon pagoda's main body, but in the main body. Meanwhile, inside the glazed demon pagoda, Nietian, hurry up and rush up. Lord Main Body has sensed it. Just as Nietian was feeling extremely excited, Fat Cat's voice suddenly rang out. It sounded extremely nervous. Chapter 1535. Boom! From within the glazed pagoda, endless streams of glazed chi rolled out in an incomparably violent manner, unleashing a terrifying killing intent as they charged towards Nietian. Nietian's eyes trembled. He saw that the big fat cat that appeared on the higher floors had 9 long tails behind it. Nine-tailed chinchilla. Nietian's heart sank as he exclaimed. It turned out that fat cat was indeed a 9-tailed chinchilla. However, he was too weak, so he only had 1 tail. Nietian, run. You're not a match for Lord Main Body. At this moment, Fat Cat's voice trembled as he screamed. The 9-tailed chinchilla's main body was very strong. It was not something that Nietian could deal with. The 10th floor and above was the forbidden area of the glazed demon pagoda. No one was allowed to enter. No way. Nietian suddenly came to his senses. He let out a furious roar as star soul wings appeared on his back. With a flap of his wings, he shot upwards. He was currently on the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. His lowest goal was the 12th floor. Therefore, he had no choice but to rush forward. You're courting death. The 9-tailed dragon cat let out a wild roar, and the glazed aura turned into a sharp blade that lunged at Nietian. Watch out! Fat Cat screamed, his voice hoarse. Nietian was not afraid at all. He activated the Astral Soul Armor and Astral Soul Shield at the same time. His entire body was like an arrow released from a bow, soaring into the sky. What a fast speed! Outside the glazed demon pagoda, the crowd could not help but exclaim when they saw the light rushing towards the higher floors of the glazed demon pagoda. Their eyes burned with passion. Under everyone's gaze, the light rushed towards the 11th floor without any hesitation. Is this kid crazy? Hua Ix's consciousness was connected to the glazed demon pagoda's main body. Of course, he knew what was happening in the glazed demon pagoda. He did not expect that Nye Tian would dare to go head-on with Nine-Tailed Chinchilla. Hoi Joshin was the glazed demon pagoda's blood drop master, but he was very careful when dealing with Nine-Tailed Chinchilla. He didn't dare to be the slightest bit arrogant. Inside the glazed demon pagoda, Nine Gods Hua did not dare to fight Nine-Tailed Chinchilla head-on. Nye Tian's reckless dash at this moment was simply seeking his own death. At the same time, in the glazed demon pagoda, something's not right. At this moment, just as the Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's fatal blow was about to land on Nye Tian, the latter suddenly discovered something. With a strange cry, the aura on his body instantly dispersed. The sudden scene made Nye Tian stunned and confused. He did not know why the Nine-Tailed Chinchilla suddenly stopped. "Old Nine, you bastard! You've attracted big trouble." Nine-Tailed Chinchilla howled furiously, but he did not dare to attack Nye Tian. He suddenly realized that Nye Tian's body contained many terrifying powers. The God-Fiend Origin Embryo, the Supreme Dragon Vein, the Supreme Twin Flames, and even the Origin Starstone. These were all incomparably terrifying powers. If Nye Tian was killed, the powers hidden in his body would explode and dissipate in the glazed demon pagoda. The Nine-Tailed Dragon Cat was confident that he could instantly take control of the Fiend God Nascent Embryo, the Supreme Dragon Bloodline, the Twin Supreme Flames, and the Origin Starstones. However, what he was afraid of was Nye Tian's Demon Essence. Devil Essence was an extremely dark power that was very difficult to destroy. If the dark, evil energy within the Devil Essence was released, it would cause irreparable damage to the glazed demon pagoda and might even destroy the glazed demon pagoda in the end. Although the probability of this was not high, only 10% at most. But Nine-Tailed Chinchilla was not willing to take the risk, because once the glazed demon pagoda was destroyed, he would have nowhere to hide and would eventually turn into a soul and dissipate. Moreover, the glazed demon pagoda had another reason to exist, and no accidents were allowed to happen. "Little brat who doesn't know life from death, stop for me." At this moment, Nine-Tailed Chinchilla growled, and then his fat claws slashed across the air, and a glazed barrier appeared. Nye Tian felt the barrier appear, and his rushing figure paused for a moment before he stopped. At this moment, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth because he had reached the 12th floor. Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's move was timely. Otherwise, Nye Tian would have entered a higher floor. Nye Tian let out a long breath. After entering the 10th floor of the glazed demon pagoda, there was no pressure at all, and he was surrounded by the purest glazed chi, which was very comfortable. Lord Body actually didn't kill you?" Fat Cat let out a strange cry, extremely shocked. He knew that Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's true form was very cruel, and he would not show any mercy to those who enter the glazed forbidden area. What was wrong with him today? He actually didn't kill Nye Tian. "Old Nine, you dare to betray me. Prepare to die." At this moment, Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's voice sounded, but the next moment, he discovered something abnormal, and he roared, "Old Nine, you bastard, you actually hid in the God-Fiend Origin Embryo space. Lord Body, if I didn't hide well, how would I dare to let him enter the 10th floor?" Fat Cat laughed. Hiding in the God-Fiend Origin Embryo, even Nine-Tailed Chinchilla's true form couldn't do anything to him. "Bastard! Bastard! Bastard!" Nine-Tailed Chinchilla was furious, but there was nothing he could do. Nye Tian wasn't interested in the emotions of the two cats. His divine senses explored the surrounding space, and he couldn't help but frown. In his opinion, other than the glazed chi being richer here, there was no difference from the 9th floor below. Why was it the forbidden area of the glazed demon pagoda? Since it was a forbidden area, there would definitely be secrets, but Nye Tian didn't see any secrets. "Nye Tian, stop looking. You aren't from the Glazed clan, so you won't be able to see anything. The glazed wonder of the glazed forbidden area can only be opened by the Glazed clan. You won't be able to find it." Fat Cat guessed what Nye Tian was thinking and said with a smile, "Glazed clan? Glazed wonder?" Nye Tian was stunned, and he had no idea what Fat Cat was talking about. He didn't think too much about it. Anyway, he had already entered the 12th floor, and that was enough. Fat Cat, I'm going to leave the glazed demon pagoda now. Are you sure you want to leave with me? Nyation glanced around, frowned, and said solemnly, Of course. Fat Cat screamed nervously and said, If you leave me here, I will be skinned alive by Lord Body. Okay. Nyation nodded slightly and prepared to leave. Although the glazed chi here was very rich, he didn't intend to stay. He didn't know why Nine-Tailed Chinchilla didn't kill him, so it was better to leave immediately. Wait a minute. Just as Nyation was about to turn around and leave, Little Fat Cat chuckled and made a strange hand seal with its two chubby paws. A strange vortex formed around it. Then, a strange scene appeared. The glazed chi in the surrounding space began to rush madly into Nyation's body, directly into the origin embryo space, and gathered in the vortex between Fat Cat's paws. Huh? Nyation's eyes narrowed slightly. It was very strange, and he didn't know what Fat Cat was doing. After a while, the vortex between Fat Cat's paws turned into a crystal ball of light, like a crystal ball, crystal clear. What is this? Nyation felt the aura of the glazed chi in the crystal ball of light, and his eyes suddenly trembled, and he cried out in surprise. Glazed crystal. Little Fat Cat chuckled and said, Little kid, this yuan crystal is a good thing. Take it as a small gift from me. Chapter 1536. What a pure glazed chi. In the glazed demon pagoda, Nyation felt the glazed chi released by the glazed crystal. He couldn't help but frown and cry out in surprise. Under the effect of the glazed crystal, Nyation felt the aura of the god-fiend nascent embryo weaken again. At the same time, it was slowly undergoing a strange change. Nyation, with the glazed crystal, not only can it increase the speed of the god-fiend nascent embryo's awakening, it can also help you suppress the god-fiend aura. Now, even a peak paramount god powerhouse won't be able to sense the god-fiend nascent embryo's aura from your body. Fat Cat laughed and said very proudly. He obviously knew that the god-fiend nascent embryo was a taboo and couldn't be known to others. Unfortunately, Nyation's god-fiend nascent embryo had already been exposed. Glazed crystal. It's indeed a good thing. Just as Fat Cat's voice fell, another voice sounded. Then, a figure appeared, startling Fat Cat. What the hell? Fat Cat cried out strangely. Seeing that there was a soul shadow beside him, he laughed and said, So there's someone else here. That's great. My life from now on won't be so boring. Indra's face darkened. He looked at Fat Cat speechlessly. Little old man, I can see that your soul aura isn't weak. You must have been a powerhouse before. Today, I'll be merciful and accept you as my little brother. Little Fat Cat chuckled, its crafty eyes sizing up Nyation as it spoke with a proud expression. Indra was speechless and almost shouted out loud. He was a peak paramount god powerhouse, the heaven-slaughtering demon sword who had destroyed countless sections. But he had to be the little brother of a cat, and such a fat cat at that. Indra could only say, This joke isn't funny at all. Little old man, I know what you're thinking. But at this moment, Fat Cat's face was full of confidence. He laughed and said, You must have failed to break through to the sage realm. That's why you ended up like this. If you become my little brother, I might be happy and tell you the method to step into the sage realm. Furthermore, the glazed crystal can even help you reconstruct your fleshly body. Really? When Sakura heard Fat Cat's words, his eyes couldn't help but tremble violently, and his eyes revealed an unconcealable passion. Stepping into the sage realm and reconstructing the corporeal body, either one of these two conditions was enough to move Sakura heaven. Do I look like I'm lying? The Fat Cat immediately put on a serious face, its fat paw stroking its long whiskers, and it actually had the demeanor of an elder. It said faintly, Don't worry, you won't lose out if you become my little brother. All right. Sakura thought for a moment and suddenly nodded heavily. His eyes flickered and he actually opened his mouth and said, Boss. Nyation clearly heard the conversation between the soul and the cat, and he couldn't help but feel speechless. Who would have thought that a peak deity realm expert of the past would actually become a cat's little brother? And he was even so willing. Nietion had some understanding of Fat Cat, and he didn't know if this fellow was tricking Sacra Heaven. Sacra Heaven was really interesting. He was actually settled by a cat, with just a few words. Nietion smiled speechlessly and no longer paid attention to them. His figure moved, and he quickly walked out of the glazed demon pagoda. Nietion. Seeing Nietion walk out, everyone cried out in surprise. Who would have thought that Nietion actually entered the 12th floor? And he even walked out safely. Huajioshin had already felt that the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda had opened, and he was extremely excited. As if he still hadn't noticed, the glazed chi of the 12th floor was almost completely absorbed by Fat Cat. It became a piece of glazed crystal. At this time, Huajioshin suddenly sensed the change in Nietion's strength. He couldn't help but frown, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. After Nietion entered the glazed demon pagoda, his strength actually rose again, and he advanced to the mid-god realm. This was too terrifying. Huajioshin felt that if he allowed Nietion to continue growing, the consequences would be unimaginable. Nietion's talent was too terrifying, and it exceeded his expectations. At this time, Nietion didn't pay attention to Huajioshin. He greeted Nie Dao and the others, and his figure moved, arriving beside Mo Rushi. Nietion. Mo Rushi's eyes were red, and there were still traces of tears at the corners of her eyes. She couldn't help but throw herself into Nietion's arms. "Rushi, you my wager. How can I bear to lose?" Nietion said softly in his heart as he tightly hugged the girl in his arms. Following that, Nietion waited until Mo Rushi had calmed down before turning his gaze to Huajioshin. "Huajioshin, I've already entered the 9th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. It's time for you to scram, right?" Nietion stared at Huajioshin and said in a deep voice. Huajioshin's face sank. No one had ever dared to speak to him like this. He hadn't expected Nietion to enter the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. In this case, he had no reason to threaten the Wind and Rain Alliance. Huajioshin thought for a moment, then replied in a cold voice, "Nietion, since you fulfill my conditions, I will naturally keep my promise." "That's good." Nietion smiled disdainfully. How could he not know what Huajioshin was thinking? Huajioshin definitely wanted to increase his strength after entering the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda, then settle the score with Nietion and the Wind and Rain Alliance. Although Nietion's talent was abnormal, he was still too weak. Huajioshin would make use of the glazed demon pagoda to break through the bottleneck of the 9-revolution glaze technique. "Nangal, let's go." Huajioshin didn't waste any time. He shouted in a low voice and left in a flash. Nangong Dushio followed him. "Brother Nya, farewell." Xingtian Alliance Master Jiang Lai didn't dare to stay any longer after seeing the two heavyweights of the Sacred Parliament leave. He smiled sinisterly and left immediately. "Jiang Lai, you despicable person. You'll suffer the consequences of your actions sooner or later if you stick together with Huajioshin." Nie Dao's lips trembled as he looked at Jiang Lai's figure. The Sacred Parliament and Xingtian Alliance left, leaving only Nietion and the Heaven and Earth duo behind. "Lord Heaven Leader, Lord Earth Leader, thank you for your help." Nietion turned to the Heaven and Earth duo and sincerely thanked them. He didn't care who the Heaven and Earth duo were. Whether it was the inescapable Net or the ancient Ming race, it was an indisputable fact that they had helped him. If it wasn't for the Heaven and Earth duo, Huajioshin and Jiang Lai definitely wouldn't have compromised. "Nietion, you don't need to thank us. We're just following Her Highness' orders." Tian Leader responded indifferently. He then turned to look at Cher and knelt on one knee. He said respectfully, "Her Highness, you've been gone for too long. Please return with us." "Her Highness, please return with us." Earth Leader also knelt at this moment and spoke respectfully. Seeing this, Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly. Although the two of them were kneeling and speaking respectfully, it was obvious that they were threatening him. "Lord Heaven Leader, Lord Earth Leader, what's the meaning of this?" Nietion frowned and spoke coldly. Sensing that the atmosphere wasn't right, Nie Dao's relaxed expression immediately tensed up. He looked at the heaven and earth duo with a heavy gaze. Chapter 1537. Cher furrowed her brows and scrunched up her face. How could she not sense the threat from the twin titans of heaven and earth? The twin titans of heaven and earth were most likely willing to follow her orders because of this moment. Tian Ke had used the hand of the Netherworld Emperor earlier not only to intimidate the nine gods, but also to intimidate Nie Dao. He had been plotting for this moment for a long time. The Dragnet hidden guards had been killed, and the twin titans of heaven and earth had arrived at the same time. They had clearly made up their minds to bring Cher back to the Dragnet. They urgently needed Cher's return for a major event, an earth-shattering event, to resurrect the Netherworld Emperor. The Netherworld Emperor, the heaven-punishing demon of ancient times, the supreme ruler of the ancient Ming. The twin titans of heaven and earth had set up the Dragnet with the ultimate goal of resurrecting the Netherworld Emperor. Not long ago, the Three Lives Reincarnation Formation had been activated with the help of the Three Lives Reincarnation Disc. However, in order to unleash its full power, the Vein of Three Lives was required. The twin titans of heaven and earth wanted to bring Cher back with the help of her Vein of Three Lives to activate the Three Lives Reincarnation Formation and resurrect the Netherworld Emperor. Cher. Nie Tian saw Cher's hesitation. He moved to her side and said solemnly, "You don't need to listen to anyone's threats." Countless images flashed through Shue's mind as she looked at Nie Tian, her crystal-clear eyes sparkling with tears. "Your Highness, please come back with us. This is your destiny." At this moment, the twin titans of heaven and earth spoke again. Destiny. Cher's eyes flickered when she heard these two words. The Three Lives Reincarnation Disc appeared in her hand as her eyes trembled. Ever since she had obtained the disc, she had vaguely sensed a voice calling out to her, telling her to return. It was a demonic voice that came from the depths of the earth. It constantly affected her temperament and made her restless. Cher. At this moment, a deep and distant voice resounded from the depths of Cher's soul. Is this really my destiny? Cher's beautiful eyes flickered and became slightly blurred. She didn't know where she came from or who she was. All this while, she had never thought about this problem. But now, this problem was like a nightmare, haunting her at all times. Nie Tian, I have to go. Cher abruptly lifted her head, her eyes trembling as she looked at Nie Tian. She knew that there were some things she had to face. Shui, are you? Nie Tian looked at Shui, and felt the confusion in her eyes. For a moment, he was at a loss for words. I want to know who I am. Cher smiled faintly and said, Once I know who I am, I will come back to find you. Nie Tian looked at the innocent smiling face in front of him, and his heart couldn't help but tremble. All this while, he had been avoiding a question, and that was Cher's true identity. Back when he activated the Three Lives Samsara Disc, Nie Tian was very glad that he was the one who activated the Samsara Disc and not Cher. He was afraid that Cher would leave him after she regained her memories. Now that Nie Tian thought about it, his thoughts were too selfish. He couldn't stop Cher from finding her true self, because that was the complete Cher. Nie Tian, some things can't be avoided. Let Cher go. At this time, Cher Tian's voice also sounded. Believe in her feelings for you. Even if she regains her memories, it won't change. Nie Tian nodded slightly in his heart. He stared at Cher. Cher, have you really made up your mind? Yes. Cher nodded with a smile, but a crystal tear flowed out of the corner of her eye. It flowed down her cheek and was incomparably clear. Nie Tian raised his palm and caught the tear. It condensed in his palm and didn't disperse like a pearl. The tear of a princess. Heaven and Earth duo was startled when they saw this. Their originally blurry faces became clear, and they were obviously extremely shocked. They didn't expect that Cher would actually shed the legendary tear of a princess at this moment. The thread of 3 lifetimes moves. The tear of a princess condenses. The tear of a princess was one of the 3 great legends of the ancient Ming race. According to the legends, the person who could touch the tear of a princess would be the person who would decide the fate of the ancient Ming race. Heaven and Earth duo suddenly looked at Nie Tian and their eyes trembled. Could it be that Nietian was the legendary person of destiny? Nietian looked at the tear of a princess in his palm and seemed to feel something. It was a very strange feeling, but it was very vague. Nietian, I'm leaving. The corners of Cher's mouth curled up in an innocent smile. Her faint smile was beautiful enough to topple a city. She wanted to leave the most beautiful smile for Nietian. Heaven and earth duo slowly stood up. Although they had a myriad of doubts in their hearts, they didn't reveal too much. They no longer hesitated and left with Cher. Nietian, I will definitely come back to find you. Cher's figure floated in the air. She didn't look back as she softly but firmly said in her heart, Cher. Nietian looked at the figure that was gradually disappearing into the distance, and a trace of tears finally fell from his eyes. A man doesn't easily shed tears because he hasn't been emotionally moved yet. Nietian, Cher will definitely be fine. After a long time, Emo Rushi came to Nietian's side and softly said, but she was very helpless. Nietian nodded firmly. He glanced at the tear of a princess in his hand and didn't think too much about it before putting it away. Cher being taken away by heaven and earth duo was not necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, Cher's safety was guaranteed. Moreover, judging from how the heaven and earth duo treated Cher, they absolutely wouldn't harm her. Instead, they would protect her with their lives. However, Nietian didn't know when he would see Cher again. Strength, it's still strength. Nietian looked down and frowned as he thought to himself. He was still too weak. If he was strong enough, he wouldn't have been forced into such a state by Huojiushin and the others. In a world where strength reigned supreme, strength would always have the greatest right to speak. The battle between a few peak experts had turned the entire Muyu city into ruins. At this moment, Heartbroken Prince, Nietshio, Ed, and the others appeared. Lord Holy Judgment, Muyu City has been destroyed. Where should I go to collect the Origin Earth Stone? Nietian looked at Heartbroken Prince and asked with a bitter smile. He was still thinking about the Origin Earth Stone. It would be a waste if he didn't take something from the Holy Council. Heartbroken Prince was extremely shocked. Of course, he knew Niedao's identity, but he didn't know the relationship between Nietian and Niedao. He didn't even know why Niedao would appear here. Heartbroken Prince had a vague feeling that all of this was related to Nietian. Nietian, Muyu City has been destroyed. Come to Divine Wind City in 3 days. I'll wait for you at the Divine Council branch there. Heartbroken Prince calmed down and said steadily, All right, thank you. Nietian smiled and didn't say anything else. Now, other than a few peak powerhouses, no one else knew his identity. He believed that Huojiushin and the others wouldn't publicize his identity either. Doing so wouldn't benefit the Holy Council or the Xingtian Alliance. Nietian, let's go. Niedao said indifferently when he saw that Nietian had settled everything. All right. Nietian nodded and prepared to leave with Niedao. Chapter 1538. God Shepherding Domain, Divine Wind City, Nie Family Branch, in a small courtyard. Rushi, how are you feeling? Did the little fellow kick you? Nietian supported Emo Rushi carefully, fearing that she would fall. Nietian, I'm really fine. I don't feel anything. Don't make a fuss, okay? Emo Rushi was speechless, but her face was filled with happiness. Ever since he knew that Emo Rushi was pregnant, Nietian had been carefully guarding her, fearing that something would happen to her. Actually, Emo Rushi didn't feel anything at all. Niedao had already said that the embryo period of the fiend god origin embryo was 9 years long. The child in Emo Rushi's womb would probably be born in at least 10 years. Rushi, what's our child's name? Nietian suddenly looked at Emo Rushi and asked abruptly. Emo Rushi was speechless and said, There are still 10 years. You have plenty of time to think of a name. That's true. Other people get pregnant for 10 months. Why does my child have to be pregnant for 10 years? Nietian said helplessly. He originally thought that he would be a father in a few months. He didn't expect that he would have to wait for 10 years. Only now did Nietian know how much his mother had suffered when she was pregnant with him. He had to admit that it wasn't good to be too strong. Even giving birth was so difficult. Lord Nietian, the clan master, is looking for you. At that moment, A man who looked like a servant appeared and called out respectfully. Niet Tian and the others were currently at the Divine Wind City branch. Niet Dao didn't bring Niet Tian back to the God Exclusion region. Instead, he came here. Niet Tian had been at the Divine Wind City for 2 days. Tomorrow, he would go to the Holy Parliament branch to collect the Origin Earthstone. Grandfather called me? What's the matter? Niet Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. He couldn't help but ask in confusion. Hurry up, Mo Rushi urged. Don't let grandfather and sixth uncle wait too long. Niet Tian nodded and warned, then be careful. A moment later, Niet Tian arrived at the lobby and saw Niet Dao and Niet Feiyu sitting in the lobby from afar. Grandfather, sixth uncle, did you call me? Niet Tian entered the main hall and saw that Niet Dao and Niet Feiyu had serious expressions, as if they had something to tell him. Niet Tian, take a seat. Niet Dao smiled and gestured for Niet Tian to sit. Niet Tian, how much do you know about your father? Niet Dao looked at Niet Tian and asked after some hesitation. Niet Tian's eyes flickered. He didn't hide anything and told him everything he knew. Regarding Niet Fenghua, Niet Tian did not know much. Most of it was heard from Yi Qinghai. Yi Qinghai. Hearing Niet Tian mention Yi Qinghai, Niet Dao couldn't help but laugh. He's really persistent. After so many years, he still hasn't given up on searching for Fenghua. Grandfather, what is the relationship between Elder Hai and father? Niet Tian frowned and couldn't help but ask. Friends of life and death. Niet Dao's expression turned solemn as he said, Fenghua saved Yi Qinghai's life many times. Back then, Yi Qinghai offended an elder of the Holy Parliament and was imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison. It was Fenghua who helped him escape from the Dark Sea prison. So that's the case. Niet Tian nodded slightly. No wonder Yi Qinghai was so loyal to Niet Fenghua. Niet Tian, you already know most of the things about your father. The one who imprisoned him was the Holy Parliament. Niet Dao let out a long sigh and said, As for where he was imprisoned, I don't know either. You're too weak right now, so it's useless even if you know. At this time, Niet Feiyu suddenly asked with a curious expression, Niet Tian, you used dragon form before? What happened? When Mo Rushi and Cher were in danger, Niet Tian had used dragon form and directly confronted Jiang, Lai Xingtian armor. It was extremely domineering. This matter is a bit complicated. At the mention of dragon form, Niet Tian couldn't help but bitterly smile. He didn't hide anything and simply explained, the dragon vein seal is on my 9 dragon veins, but I can't control it. Whether I could dragon form or not, I can't decide. After Niet Tian's dragon form, the dragon vein seal became silent again and couldn't be used. Niet Tian tried to recall the details of that day and tried to dragon form again, but he couldn't control it. After trying several times to no avail, he could only give up. Niet Dao and Niet Feiyu listened to Niet Tian's story and learned that he had so many fortuitous encounters over the years. Grandfather, that person called Jiang Lai, is he the realm lord of the Seal God region? Niet Tian suddenly asked as he thought of something. Niet Dao was slightly startled and said, the Xingtianzhang family's ancestral ground is in the Seal God region. Several 100,000 years ago, Jiang Lai was indeed the Sealed God region's realm lord, but he is no longer the realm lord now. His identity is even more terrifying than the realm lord. As expected, Niet Tian's expression darkened. It seemed that Jiang Lai was the Sword Elder's enemy. The Sword Elder was someone from several 100,000 years ago, so it wasn't strange that Jiang Lai's identity had changed. Niet had to know why Niet Tian would suddenly ask about Jiang Lai, but he didn't care. He said, Niet Tian, what are your plans now? Plans? Niet Tian was stunned. He didn't think too much about this. Yes. Niet Dao nodded, and his expression became solemn again. He said, if you help Huajiu open the Glazed Pagoda to the 12th level, his strength will definitely increase again. At that time, I'm afraid the Wind and Cloud Alliance will no longer be a threat to him. Yes. Niet Feiyu nodded and said, Huajiu's strength is already at the peak of the paramount God realm. If he increases again, it's very likely that he will reach the legendary Sage realm. At that time, Knowing the 9 major realms will be his match. Little kid, don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything. Before Nyefiu could finish, a ridiculing voice suddenly sounded. Then, an exaggeratedly large cat appeared on Nyetion's shoulder. It crossed its paws in front of its chest and said with an extremely arrogant expression, "How can the Sage Realm be reached so easily? Even if Huojiao is given another 100,000 years, he still won't be able to reach the Sage Realm." This is? Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu couldn't help but be stunned when they saw a fat cat suddenly jump out of nowhere. Nie Tion's face darkened. He smiled awkwardly and explained, "This is Fat. He's a clone of the Glazed Pagoda's artifact spirit. When I came out of the Glazed Pagoda, I conveniently brought him along." The Glazed Pagoda's artifact spirit. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu were stunned again. Who would have thought that not only did Nie Tion enter the 12th floor of the Glazed Pagoda, he even brought out an artifact spirit clone. This was too terrifying. Fat, you're very familiar with the Glazed Pagoda. In your opinion, how much will Huojiao's strength increase after entering the 12th floor? Nie Tion became cold and asked solemnly. Fat Cat held its chin and pondered. After a long time, it said, Huojiao's 9 revolution glaze technique has already reached the 4th revolution. After entering the 12th floor, he will probably be able to reach the 5th or 6th revolution. This way, he won't need to fear the backlash of a 9 revolution glaze technique. His strength should be at the half-sage realm. Half-sage. Nie Tion and the others were stunned. They didn't know what this strength meant. Actually, a half-sage realm expert isn't that great. Fat Cat curled its lips slightly and suddenly looked at Nie Dao. Huojiao has reached the half-sage realm. You probably won't even be able to withstand his aura. Chapter 1539. In the Great Hall, Nie Tion and the others were stunned when they heard Fat Cat's words. If 9 revolution glass technique reached the 5th or 6th revolution, 9 revolution god strength would reach the half-sage level. At that time, Nie Dao wouldn't even be able to withstand his aura. This was too terrifying. Although Nie Dao was at a disadvantage against 9 revolution god now, he had at least a 30% chance of winning. Even if 9 revolution god could kill him, he would have to pay a heavy price. But once 9 revolution god's strength reached half-sage, Nie Dao would no longer be his match. At that time, the two would be on completely different levels. Fat, you're joking, right? Nie Tion became cold and asked with a frown. Although he knew that half-sage was definitely stronger than peak supreme beings, there shouldn't be such a huge difference. After all, half-sage wasn't a true sage. Nie Tion, does this noble one look like I'm joking? Fat Cat raised his eyebrows and his whiskers stood up. He looked like he deserved a beating. Nie Tion's eyes flickered. It seemed that Fat Cat was telling the truth. Half-sage was indeed an exceptionally terrifying existence. Fat, 9 revolution glass technique was obtained from the Glazed Demon Pagoda, right? Nie Tion suppressed his shock and asked solemnly. Fat Cat nodded and said, with 9 revolution glass technique strength, it was impossible for him to become the master of the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Unfortunately, the previous master of the pagoda died mysteriously. In the end, 9 revolution glass technique got a great bargain. He dripped his blood on it and inexplicably became the master of the Glazed Demon Pagoda. 9 revolution glass technique's martial talent is average. Compared to the fiend god nascent embryo and the body of a sage, he's much weaker. If he had relied on his own talent, he would probably only be able to open the 5th level of the pagoda. However, this person is extremely scheming. After obtaining the pagoda, he cultivated the 9 revolution glass technique and used the glass chi to refine his body and open the 9 pupils. He walked step by step to the supreme peak and even established the Holy Parliament. If it weren't for those top-notch geniuses climbing the Glazed Demon Pagoda, Huojiao wouldn't have been able to enter the 9th floor of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, and her strength wouldn't be as terrifying as it is today. At this point, Fat Cat couldn't help but laugh. She looked at Nie Tion and chuckled. Now that you've broken through the 12th level of the Glazed Pagoda, you've done Calamity 9 a huge favor. His 9-revolution glaze technique is about to break through soon. Tian frowned, and his face darkened. He did not expect that breaking through the 12th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda would have such a huge impact. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Hua Jiushin's achievements today were all thanks to the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Next, with the help of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, his strength would break through again and reach an unknown, terrifying level. The 5th transformation is the bottleneck of the 9-revolution glaze technique. Once you break through to the 5th transformation, you will no longer be pressured by the power of the backlash, and your combat power will increase substantially. Fat Cat pouted and continued, looking helpless. Fat, according to your estimation, how long will it take for Hua Jiushin to break through to the 5th transformation of the 9-revolution glaze technique? Tian became cold and asked with trembling eyes. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu couldn't help but feel nervous. When Hua Jiushin would break through was related to the survival of the Wind and Rain Alliance. They hoped that it would take a little longer so that Tian would have time to grow. That's hard to say. Fat Cat rubbed her chin and pondered. She said, Hua Jiushin's talent isn't top-notch, but it's not too bad either. He has been stuck at the 4th transformation for close to 200,000 years. After entering the 10th level of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, if he tries to cultivate by himself, it will take him hundreds or even thousands of years. That's good. Hearing this, Tian let out a long breath. 1,000 years wasn't a long time for a God Realm martial artist, but Tian was confident that he could raise his strength to the highest peak in such a long time. Only 1,000 years. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu cried out in surprise. They said in unison, how can it be so fast? 1,000 years was the most optimistic estimate for Tian, and it was impossible for him to grow to the point where he could fight against Hua Jiushin. In the endless history of the 9 major domains, there were only a handful of martial artists who could step into the highest realm before the age of 10,000. As far as they knew, Tian's father, Nie Fenghua, was one, and Tian Kuei was another. Nie Feiyu might also step into the highest realm before the age of 10,000. Tian's talent was above Nie Fenghua, Tian Kuei, and the others, but it was no different from wishful thinking for him to step into the highest realm within 1,000 years. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu didn't even dare to think of this kind of unimaginable speed of advancement. Grandfather, 6th uncle, 1,000 years is enough. Tian smiled faintly at this moment, his eyes filled with an unusually domineering confidence. It was a huge problem for ordinary martial artists to reach the peak of the highest realm, but Tian was confident in his own talent. One had to know that Tian had only been in the domains for a few months, and he had already advanced from a heavenly emperor to a middle god. 1,000 years was enough for him. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu looked at Tian. The domineering confidence in the latter's eyes shocked them. For a martial artist to have such confidence, there was nothing in this world that could stump him. However, at this time, Fat Cat laughed strangely and looked at Tian with a playful gaze. He laughed mischievously and said, Little boy Tian, you are too optimistic. This lord said that Hua Jiushin would need 100 to 1,000 years to break through. However, this is under the situation where he is fumbling around on his own. If Lord Main Body gives him pointers, this time will be greatly reduced. And Tian's eyes focused, and he was stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember that 9-tailed Chinchilla's main body was still in the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Although 9-tailed Chinchilla was only an artifact spirit, he was extremely powerful. If he gave Hua Jiushin pointers, it would be terrible. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu looked at each other and immediately understood. The Lord Main Body Fat Cat mentioned was the main body of the Demon Pagoda's artifact spirit. Fat, if your main body gives Hua Jiushin pointers, how long will we need to break through? Tian swallowed and asked carefully. His voice was obviously a little nervous. Lord Main Body's strength is unfathomable. If he is willing to give pointers, even if Hua Jiushin is an idiot, he will be able to break through very quickly. Little Fat Cat had a casual look on its face as it chuckled. A conservative estimate would be a few decades at most. If it's less, it would be around 10 years. 10 years. Nietion's expression stiffened, and he cried out in shock. To go from 1,000 years to 10 years, this jump was too big, and he could not accept it. He was confident that he could raise his strength to the paramount god realm in 1,000 years, but 10 years was undoubtedly a fool's dream. One must know that god realm martial artists often went into seclusion for decades or centuries. To them, 10 years was just the blink of an eye. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu were even more petrified. Their eyes did not move, and they looked at Fat Cat in shock, unable to conceal the fear in their expressions. The atmosphere instantly became oppressive. Chapter 1540. Divine Wind City's Nie family's main hall was deathly silent. One could hear a pin drop. After a long while, Nie Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. His stiff expression relaxed a little, but he still couldn't hide the fear on his face. 10 years. I only have 10 years left, Nie Tian murmured in his heart, his eyes trembling and flickering. In an instant, he felt as if there was a sharp sword hanging over his head, which could fall at any time. With the temperament of the 9 gods of calamity, once she broke through, she would definitely attack the Wind and Cloud Alliance, as well as Nie Tian. At this moment, cold sweat seeped out of Nie Tian's back. Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu's expressions were still stiff, and they couldn't make a sound for a long time. Nie Tian, 10 years is actually not short time. If you are willing to work hard, under this noble one's guidance, you might be able to ascend to the supreme realm. At this moment, Fat Cat chuckled, a relaxed expression on his face. You're not joking? Nie Tian's throat moved again, and he couldn't even speak coherently. Reaching the supreme realm in 10 years. If this came from someone else's mouth, Nie Tian would definitely think that person was crazy. But if it was said by little Fat Cat, there might be a slight chance. No matter what, Fat Cat was also a 9-tailed chinchilla, even though this fellow only had 1 tail. Of course, Fat Cat shrieked, then chuckled and said, "These 2 days, this noble one has already thoroughly examined your body. There are many good things in your body, and your martial physique has barely passed. If you can obtain some good things and eat them, your strength will increase by leaps and bounds." Good things? Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu were stunned. The former said, "Lord Chinchilla, are you talking about divine pills? What divine pill do you want? Even if it's a level 9 divine pill, I, Nie Dao, can get it to you." Many God Realm cultivators consumed large amounts of divine pills to ascend. This kind of increase in strength was very fast, but compared to those martial artists who relied on bitter cultivation to advance, their combat strength would be much weaker. Moreover, refining a divine pill also required time. Generally speaking, a 5th-tier divine pill could help a lesser god advance by 1 or 2 minor realms. However, it would take decades or even centuries of secluded cultivation to completely refine a divine pill. To Nie Tian, this sort of advancement in strength was simply the speed of a tortoise. It was completely unfeasible. Stop fooling around. What's so good about divine pills? The Fat Cat rolled its eyes at Nie Dao, its face full of disdain. Even if it was a level 9 god pill, it was still trash in its eyes, not worth mentioning at all. The good stuff it was talking about was definitely things like the Glaze Crystal and Supreme Twin Flames. The Fat Cat had already checked Nie Tian's body. Apart from his celestial demon nascent embryo, there was also the Supreme Dragon Meridians, the Supreme Dual Flames, and most importantly, the Raw Star Stone. The Raw Star Stone was the thing that the Fat Cat valued the most. Before the celestial demon nascent embryos, 3,000 celestial demon power was completely awakened. The Raw Star Stone was the most powerful thing in Nie Tian's body. The Fat Cat did not know where Nie Tian had obtained such a good thing like the Raw Star Stone, but the Raw Star Stone would be the key to Nie Tian's rapid advancement in strength. Without the Raw Star Stone, the Fat Cat would not have dared to say that it could help Nie Tian advance to the Supreme Realm within 10 years. Lord Main Body, you have 9 tails, and I only have 1. Let's have a competition this time. Let's see whether your guidance of the 9 calamity deities is more powerful, or my guidance in Nie Tian is more powerful. The fat cat chuckled in its mind and said sinisterly, "Fat, I believe you." Nietion nodded solemnly. At this moment, he had no choice but to believe in the fat cat. "Little boy Nietion, believe in me. This will be the wisest decision you'll ever make in your life. We'll set off tomorrow to search for the good stuff." The fat cat smiled proudly. Its fat body circled around Nietion once before entering the nascent embryo space. "Grandfather, sixth uncle, I'll be going out to train with Fat. I'll leave Ru Shi in your care." Nietion nodded slightly, and his eyes became resolute. He did not have much time left, so he had to make the most of it and improve his strength without stopping. "Amen." Niet Dao nodded solemnly and said, "Your sixth uncle and I will bring Ru Shi back to the Wind and Cloud Alliance today. She'll definitely be safe there." Niet Dao had already left the Wind and Cloud Alliance for 2 days. There were some matters that he had to attend to. There was no longer any meaning for him to stay here. In the past 2 days, he had already investigated the surrounding cities and found nothing out of the ordinary. This meant that the news of Niet Tian possessing the celestial demon nascent embryo had not spread yet. At this moment, Jioshin must have entered the glazed demon pagoda to cultivate. The Holy Parliament would not make a move against Niet Tian for the time being. Moreover, Niet Dao knew that although he and Nie Feiyu could protect Niet Tian by staying here, it would also cause him to lose the opportunity to train. If a martial artist wanted to become stronger, they could not always stay in their swaddling clothes. From now on, Niet Tian would have to walk his own path. "All right." Niet Tian nodded solemnly and stood up. He said, "I'll go find Ru Shi now." Saying so, Niet Tian turned and left the hall. A moment later, Mo Ru Shi, Niet Xiao, and Yi arrived. Niet Tian had already explained the situation to Mo Ru Shi, so the two had no choice but to separate. Mo Ru Shi understood that if she stayed by Niet Tian's side, she would become his burden. Moreover, the child in her womb would be in danger. Although she did not want to be separated from Niet Tian, she had no other choice. "Niet Tian, I will arrange for Ru Shi to enter the Nie family's ancestral ground. She will be absolutely safe there," Niet Dao said solemnly with a grave expression. "Thank you, grandfather." Niet Tian nodded slightly. Although he did not know where the Nie family's ancestral ground was, since Niet Dao said it was absolutely safe, then there should be no problem. "Father, are you going to let Miss Ru Shi enter the Nie family's ancestral ground?" Nie Feiyu frowned and said worriedly, "I'm afraid the Elders' Council might not agree. This matter is not up to them. Ru Shi carries the Nie family's bloodline. I must ensure her safety," Nie Dao said solemnly and in an extremely domineering manner. The Nie family's ancestral ground was where the Nie family rose to power. It was an alternate space. Rumor had it that one of the 9 creators, the Nie family's ancestor, was in the Nie family's ancestral ground and had left behind his inheritance. Originally, only members of the Nie family were allowed to enter the Nie family's ancestral ground. Although Mo Ru Shi was Nie Tian's wife, her surname was not Nie. If Nie Dao allowed her to enter the Nie family's ancestral ground, the Nie family's Elders' Council would most likely object. However, he could not care so much. For Mo Ru Shi's safety, he had to let her enter the Nie family's ancestral ground. Following that, Nie Dao and Nie Feiyu did not delay any further and left with Mo Ru Shi. Niet Dao and the others rose into the sky and disappeared into a divine boat, passing through the void and leaving. Niet Tian looked at the gradually disappearing divine boat in the sky. His eyes were filled with warmth and moisture. Mo Ru Shi leaving with Niet Dao was the best choice at the moment. "Ru Shi, don't worry. I will definitely let our child be born into this world safely," Niet Tian said solemnly in his heart. His eyes revealed extreme determination. Niet Tian looked at the sky and only calmed down after a long time. Cher had left, and Mo Ru Shi had also left. One could imagine the disappointment in his heart. After a while, Niet Tian returned to his room, and his emotions gradually calmed down. At this moment, Fat Cat's figure suddenly appeared and said indifferently, "Little doll, your 2 wives are quite impressive. One has the body of a sage, and the other has the meridians of 3 lives. No wonder God Hojio can't tolerate them. And yet Tion laughed, but his face was filled with bitterness. He had to admit that this fat cat was indeed impressive. She could see through everything at a glance. Just this eyesight alone was more impressive than Sakura. Fat, what are we going to look for next? And yet Tion asked indifferently. He was much calmer now. Let's look for the Mother Earth origin stone first. Fat Cat raised her eyebrows and said casually. Chapter 1541. Origin Earth Stone. In the hall, after hearing Fat Cat's words, Nietion's expression froze for a few seconds. Seeing Nietion's reaction, Fat Cat couldn't help but be surprised and laughed. You know about Origin Earth Stone too? I can't tell that a little kid like you knows quite a lot. Nietion slowly reacted. He just felt that this was too much of coincidence. Regarding Origin Earth Stone, he didn't know much. He only heard some information from Zhao Zi. But Inescapable Net and Crimson Moon Peak both wanted to get their hands on Origin Earth Stone. It was obvious that it was a very precious item. Nietion didn't hide anything and immediately told Fat Cat about the God Palace tournament, and finally said, I know nothing about Origin Earth Stone. I've never even seen it before. So that's how it is. Fat Cat let out a weird cry, then looked at Nietion weirdly and chuckled. Nietion, your luck is really not bad. You get whatever you want. Even this deity is a little jealous. Get to the point. Nietion couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with Fat Cat and asked directly, what exactly is Origin Earth Stone? Ordinary Origin Earth Stone, of course it's not something good. Fat Cat smiled proudly and said, but Origin Earth Stone with high purity, that's different. Origin Earth Stone is a strange kind of origin stone born deep underground. It can absorb Origin Earth Essence energy. Origin Earth Essence energy. Hearing this name again, Nietion couldn't help but be stunned and asked, is this a kind of origin energy? Fat Cat let out another surprised cry, looked at Nietion with a weird expression, and chuckled. Nietion, you're getting more and more amazing. You actually know about origin energy. Eyebrows furrowed, Nietion asked in a grim voice, is it very powerful? He had only heard of origin energy. Other than that, he knew nothing about it. The power of origin is involved in the creation and destruction of this world. So, of course, it's powerful. The Fat Cat let out a strange cry, but then laughed and said, but you're too weak right now. You can't understand origin energy at all, so I won't tell you too much. You only need to know that there's a huge secret behind the Mother Earth Primordial Stone. That's enough. With that, the Fat Cat's body flickered and disappeared. Nietion's face darkened, and he could only smile helplessly. Fat Cat returned to the space of the nascent embryo, and Sakura's figure appeared beside him. He frowned and said, Fat Boss, you can't really be thinking of bringing Nietion to search for Mother Earth vital energy, right? That is Earth attribute source power. Although Nietion's demon essence can fuse with source power, his strength is far too weak. I'm afraid he won't be able to withstand that kind of power, right? The current Sakura had really become the underling of the Fat Cat. The Fat Cat chuckled and said, Little Tion, looks like you don't know what Mother Earth vital energy is at all. That's just a kind of secondary source power, and it's still far from the true origin energy. Let Nietion try to absorb some Mother Earth vital energy first, and see how much his 10th vital meridian can withstand. I'll plan for the future. I'll listen to Fat Boss. Sakura smiled awkwardly. He indeed knew very little about origin energy. Little Tion, I'm going to rest. You can leave. The Fat Cat waved his hand casually, and his round body stretched lazily. He actually yawned. This scene was a little funny. Sakura was a person who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. If the time that his soul had existed was included, it would be close to 1,000,000 years. He was once a pinnacle expert, yet he was bowing and scraping in front of Fat Cat. It was truly laughable. Fat Boss, that secret regarding advancing to the Sage Realm. At this moment, Sakura chuckled, and his eyes shone brilliantly with incomparable passion. Little Tion, don't be anxious. The Fat Cat smiled meaningfully and said, You're not a child, and you should know the logic of haste makes waste. How can it be so easy to break through to the sage realm? Our next focus is on how to help you recover your corporeal body. As for the matter regarding the sage realm, we'll talk about it after you recover your corporeal body. All right. Sakura nodded his head with a helpless expression. Of course, he knew the difficulty of breaking through to the sage realm. Back then, he killed tens of thousands of swordsmen and created the Wan Jian Soul Tomb, but he still failed to break through to the sage realm. There was also the Desolate Ancestor, who was also an example of someone who failed to break through to the sage realm. Sakura understood that before his corporeal body recovered, everything was just empty talk. Everything couldn't be rushed, so he had to endure it slowly. The fat cat chuckled, but in his heart he said, "Little Tian, the secret of the sage realm is this deity's biggest bargaining chip to control you. How can I casually say it out? Do you think this deity is as stupid as you?" The fat cat glanced at Sakura, and then his body moved, and he actually directly entered the ocean that was condensed by the power of gods and demons. The power of gods and demons is an abnormally tyrannical life force. Whether this deity can grow 9 tails and become a real 9-tailed chinchilla, it all depends on the ocean of gods and demons. The fat cat lay on his back on the ocean of gods and demons with a comfortable and contented look, and secretly said in his heart. At this moment, a small fork actually appeared at the tip of his tail, and under the infiltration of the power of gods and demons, it slowly and steadily expanded. The forked tail was a sign of the growth of the 9-tailed chinchilla, indicating that the fat cat was going to grow from 1 tail to 2. The ocean of gods and demons was the power of gods and demons that had not yet awakened. In any case, Nietian had no use for it, so it just happened to benefit the fat cat. However, what the fat cat didn't know was that while he was absorbing the power of gods and demons, in addition to his strength increasing, his body was also undergoing strange changes. At the same time, outside the origin embryo space, Nietian sat cross-legged and quickly entered a state of cultivation. His divine sense entered the Star River domain, and Nietian directly came to the 6th layer of the Star River. At this moment, his strength was already at the early stage of the mid-god stage. From the low god to the mid-god stage, the biggest change for Nietian was the awakening of the power of 100 billion stars. At this moment, the power of the 900 billion stars in his body had awakened 600 billion, and the 6th layer of the Star River was completely lit up. What kind of boundary is this Star River forbidden space? Nietian looked at the shining 6th layer of the Star River, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up, and he murmured. When the 6th layer of the Star River opened, what Nietian received was the Star River forbidden space. 2 days ago, he had thoroughly sensed the Star River forbidden space, and it seemed to be a very powerful boundary. When Nietian released the Star River forbidden space, he could feel the power of the stars in his body grow a lot stronger. The heaven-shrouding totem, the eye of the starry sky, the hellfire crucible, the starry sky ancient martial incantation, and the starry sky sword formation were all greatly strengthened in the Star River forbidden space. Nietian muttered to himself, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. I wonder if the forbidden starry river domain will weaken others in any way other than me. Up until now, he had never used the Star River forbidden space. However, he could sense that the Star River forbidden space was definitely a very terrifying boundary. The powerful energy of the boundary was even more terrifying than Luo Xian's 1,000 Clouds enchantment. Chapter 1542. The next morning, as the sun rose, Nietian walked out of his room. Moments later, Nietxiu and Ed appeared. Nietian informed the patriarch of Divine Wind City's Nie family and left with Nietxiu and Ed. Today was the appointed day. With Heartbroken Prince, they were going to the Holy Assembly's branch. Brother Nietian, will we be able to get the reward for the grand competition of the 12th shrine today? Ed asked excitedly. If nothing goes wrong, we should be able to get it. Nietian smiled faintly. He was also looking forward to seeing what the legendary Mother Earth primordial stone was. At this moment, Fat Cat seemed to have discovered something. He suddenly let out a strange cry and appeared on Nietion's shoulder. He stared at ED with his exaggeratedly large eyes and laughed. This kid is not bad. He actually has such a powerful divine dragon bloodline. No wonder he could fuse with the demon dragon's heart. Fat Cat's eyes were sharp, as if no one had any secrets in front of him. He could see through ED's divine dragon bloodline and demon dragon's heart. Nietio and ED had seen Fat Cat before, so they were not too surprised. Fat Cat, do I need you to tell me that? ED, will grow to be a man at the pinnacle of the sovereign stage. ED smiled happily. Fat Cat curled his lips and said, You're not bad. The Demon Dragon King chose the right person to give you the Demon Dragon's heart. Of course. ED roared with laughter, and he couldn't help but feel slightly smug. Nietion smiled and scanned ED with his divine sense. He was startled and asked, ED, you become a low god? Yes. ED nodded and said, I broke through after coming out of the glazed demon pagoda. Nietion nodded and smiled. He deeply felt ED's terrifying talent. One should know that ED was only in his teens, but he relied on his own strength to break through to the godly realm. It was truly terrifying. No wonder this kid is so arrogant. It turns out that he has broken through to the god realm. Nietion glanced at ED and laughed in his heart. A few moments later, Nietion and the others appeared in the Holy Parliament branch. Nietion couldn't help but wryly smile at the majestic palace before him. I hope there won't be any accidents this time. After entering the Great Hall, Nietion saw a young master heartbroken from afar. Young Master Heartbroken was already waiting for him. Nietion walked up to the heartbroken young master and smiled faintly. Lord Holy Judge, Nietion, you're here. Young Master Heartbroken nodded with a smile and said, Come with me. Under young Master Heartbroken's lead, Nietion and the others arrived at a secret room. After entering the room, Nietion saw that the other two holy arbiters were also there. Chen Wuqing and the others were also waiting. When Chen Wuqing saw Nietion and the others, he couldn't help but look at them. When he sensed Nietion's strength, his eyes couldn't help but tremble and his whole body stiffened on the spot. In just a few days, Nietion had advanced from the late stage of low god to the early stage of mid god. Chen Wuqing looked at Nietion with a dumbfounded expression. His expression clearly said, This is impossible. Breaking through several realms in just a few days was impossible in anyone's eyes. What happened to Nietion completely shattered Chen Wuqing's understanding of martial arts. He originally thought that he and Nietion were geniuses of the same level. But now, he suddenly realized that his talent was worlds apart from Nietion's. The others also sensed the change in Nietion's strength, including Jiang Baoyu and Nie Wuxiang. They were shocked and couldn't utter a word for a long time. Nietion stood where he was, calm and collected. The others didn't know what happened in Muyu City that day, so it wasn't strange for them to have such expressions. After a while, an azure-robed old man walked out of the inner hall. Behind him were several black-robed cultivators. Each of them had powerful but restrained auras. They were all mid-god experts. The azure-robed old man walked up and swept his gaze across the crowd. He asked in a deep voice, The 6 leaders are here, right? The 3 holy arbiters bowed and nodded. Leaders of the 3 celestial emperors, please step forward. The azure-robed old man said indifferently. ED, Hu Zhongling, and Situ Qian stepped forward. The azure-robed old man's divine sense swept over the 3. Then he took out 3 divine elixirs and said, The divine elixirs in my hands are 7th grade divine elixirs. They will greatly help you improve your strength. Take them. Thank you, Your Excellency. The 3 bowed and expressed their gratitude. Each of them received a divine elixir. Although 7th grade divine elixirs weren't particularly valuable, they were very useful to ED and the others. They could help them improve again. Next, the azure-robed old man smiled strangely and glanced at Nietion and the others. He waved his hand, and a pile of smooth and round black stones appeared on the ground. They were about the same size. The moment the pile of black stones appeared, the room was filled with a mysterious aura that made people feel indescribably comfortable. Origin Earthstone. In Nietion's mind, Fat Cat's exclamation sounded. She seemed very excited. This is the Origin Earthstone? Nietion was stunned and speechless. The azure-robed old man had thrown something as precious as the Origin Earthstone out like trash. This was too ridiculous. Chen Wuqing and Gongsun Baoyue were also stunned. They didn't understand. 3 lesser god leaders, this is your reward, the Origin Earthstone. The azure-robed old man raised an eyebrow and said, "Come forward and pick. Each of you can only take one." Nietion was taken aback once again and almost cried out, "Only one?" He originally thought that the Origin Earthstone would be a huge rock like the 3 Lives Stone. He didn't expect it to be a pile of small stones the size of a goose egg. What he couldn't accept the most was that he could only take one small stone. He couldn't understand why the lesser god leaders would receive such a reward. "What? You don't want it?" The azure-robed old man's face darkened when he saw Nietion and the others stunned. He said impatiently, "If you don't want it, I'll keep the Origin Earthstone." "Yes, of course I want it." Nietion finally reacted. He took a step forward and prepared to pick a Origin Earthstone. Since he was already like this, he might as well pick one. This azure-robed old man should be a god pill master. Moreover, his level wasn't low and he had a bad temper. Nietion walked forward and looked around. He saw a larger one and stretched out his hand, wanting to pick it up. "Wait." At this moment, Fat Cat's voice sounded, almost scaring Nietion. "What's wrong?" Nietion's gaze froze, and he asked with a frown. "Nietion, these Origin Earthstones have all been used. The Origin Earth energy in them has basically been depleted. The Holy Parliament is really black-hearted to use this as a reward for the lesser god leaders." Little Fat Cat pouted and said, "That old man has a few unused Mother Earth primordial stones on him. You have to get those pieces over. They've all been used." Nietion was stunned. No wonder this green-clothed old man casually threw out the Mother Earth essence stones. It turned out that they were all used waste. At this moment, Nietion looked at the azure-robed old man, and his eyes darkened. Chapter 1543. In the room, Nietion looked at the old man with burning eyes, and his expression gradually became gloomy. "Brat, why are you looking at me like that?" The old man had a guilty conscience and was scared by Nietion's stare. He couldn't help but growl. "Nothing." Nietion smiled faintly and said, "I just didn't expect that the Holy Parliament would give a pile of used Mother Earth origin stones as a reward." As soon as Nietion's words fell, everyone present was stunned and looked at the azure-robed old man with a strange expression. The others didn't know, but the 3 holy adjudicators knew that the Holy Parliament would definitely give out good quality Mother Earth origin stones, and it was impossible for them to be used. "Brat, what nonsense are you talking about?" The old man was furious and roared. "These Mother Earth origin stones are all good quality. Although they're a little broken, they're definitely not used. If you're not satisfied, I'll let you take a few more pieces." The old man obviously didn't expect that Nietion could see that the Mother Earth origin stones on the ground were used. Mother Earth origin stones were precious items, and very few people had seen them before. Moreover, there wasn't much difference between used and unused ones, and even divine alchemists below level 5 couldn't tell. Nietion looked ordinary, so how could he see through it? "Take a few more pieces?" Nietion laughed and said faintly, "Lord Elder is really generous. Do you think you can give away something like Mother Earth origin stones just like that?" "You." The old man panicked and couldn't say anything for a moment. Heartbroken young master and the others were smart people, and they immediately noticed that something was wrong. Their expressions changed. "Stinking brat, don't slander me. This elder is a rank 7 divine pill master of the Sacred Assembly. If this elder says that this is a good Mother Earth essence stone, then it's definitely not wrong." The green-robed elder panicked and directly used his status to pressure Jiang Chun. These divine alchemists dealt with all kinds of herbs and cauldrons all day long, and they weren't very scheming. With just a few words, Nietion found out the truth. "Lord Elder, the 3 holy adjudicators are here." You have to be responsible for what you say. Nyetian smiled faintly and said, "Why don't we wait for the other elders to come and let them determine the truth?" The old man in cyan became even more flustered. His eyes flickered violently as he roared in a low voice, "Brat, what do you want?" Nyetian raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Lord Elder, don't you have a few pieces of Mother Earth origin stones? Take out those pieces." "How did you know?" The green-robed old man was stunned and blurted out. Only in the next moment did he realize that he had spilled the beans. "Sir, please don't make things difficult for us." Heartbroken young master finally understood what was going on. He took a step forward and spoke with a gloomy expression. Jiang Baoyu and Nye Wushang also took a step forward with heavy expressions. The green-clothed elder had an embarrassed expression as he glared at Nyetian. In the end, he still took out 3 pieces of Mother Earth essence stones from his body, 3 low-level deity chiefs, and 3 pieces of Mother of Earth origin stones. This was obviously not a coincidence. Nyetian took 1 piece of Mother of Earth origin stone and the corner of his mouth slightly raised. "And this piece is not bad. It has sufficient Mother Earth origin energy." The fat cat chuckled and was very satisfied. He then said, "Nyetian, ask where these Mother Earth origin stones came from. Also, ask for this pile of waste on the ground." Nyetian's face darkened. The fat cat was really insatiable. He even wanted the waste. "Lord Elder, I would like to ask, where did these Mother Earth origin stones come from?" Nyetian smiled faintly, and his expression was much calmer. "I don't know." The green-robed old man had a sullen expression. If it wasn't for Nyetian, he would be able to pocket the 3 pieces of Mother Earth origin stones. Nyetian laughed bitterly and had a helpless expression. "Forget it. This Mother Earth origin stone is estimated to be several 100,000 years old. This old man probably doesn't know either. Let's wait for me to use my heaven-defying method and see if I can find a Mother Earth origin vein. If we can find the Mother Earth origin vein, we will be rich." The fat cat waved his hand impatiently and chuckled. "Mother Earth origin vein?" Nyetian was stunned for a moment. He didn't know what the fat cat was talking about. He didn't ask much and looked at the green-robed old man again. He forced a laugh and said, "Lord Elder, you don't want these waste on the ground, right? Why don't you give them to me?" Take it, take it." The green-robed old man had an irritated expression and directly left. The waste of the Mother Earth origin stones were no different from ordinary stones when the Mother Earth origin energy was depleted. They were completely useless. Nyetian chuckled and took out his spatial ring. He directly kept all the Mother Earth origin stones. The others at the side were stunned. They didn't know why Nyetian wanted a pile of waste stones. At this moment, everyone's gaze towards Nyetian changed again. They became very respectful. If it wasn't for Nyetian this time, those 3 Mother Earth origin stones would have been taken away by the green-robed old man. "Nyetian, since you guys have already received the reward, it's time to return." Heartbroken young master let out a long breath of turbid air. His expression was much more relaxed. As long as he sent Nyetian back to the God's shocking realm, his mission would be complete. "Lord Saint Adjudicator, I won't trouble you. Can you please hand over the realm divine ship to me and let me return by myself?" Nyetian looked at Heartbroken young master and smiled faintly. This Heartbroken young master was in a difficult position. He said, "I'm the Saint Adjudicator of the God's shocking realm. I have the responsibility to protect you guys back to the God shocking realm safely. If anything happens to you guys, I will feel uneasy. Lord Saint Adjudicator, don't worry. We will be fine." Nyetian nodded and smiled with a firm expression. "All right." Heartbroken young master saw that Nyetian was insistent. He thought for a while and finally agreed. Heartbroken young master then handed the realm divine ship to Nyetian and told him how to use it. He repeatedly reminded that the realm divine ship could only be used once. If it was used again, it might not be able to withstand the impact of the space-time storm. Nyetian put away the realm divine ship. After thanking Heartbroken young master, he didn't stay any longer and immediately left the Holy Parliament. After leaving the Holy Parliament, Nyetian didn't rush back to the God-shocking realm. Instead, he went to the Godwind mountain range outside the Divine Wind City. He wanted to take a good look at the Mother Earth Origin Stone first. After entering a valley, Tion sensed around. After confirming that there was no one around, he took out the Mother Earth Origin Stone and placed it in the center of his palm to sense it. It contained an extremely violent energy, as if it was nurtured by a powerful life force. Mother Earth Origin Stone, what is the use of it? Tion muttered to himself with a puzzled expression. Although the Mother Earth origin energy was strange and violent, Tion couldn't sense anything else. Why would the Heavenly Network care so much about a small Mother Earth Origin Stone? The Mother Earth Origin Stone isn't the main point. The main point is, where did the Mother Earth Origin Stone come from? Our goal is to find the Mother Earth origin vein. At this time, Fat Cat's voice sounded. Immediately after, he was shocked and shouted, "Someone is coming." Tion frowned and spread out his consciousness. As expected, he saw a figure appear. When he saw the face of this figure, he heaved a sigh of relief and muttered, "So it's Chun Wuching. Shouldn't Chun Wuching have returned to his own realm? Why is he here?" Tion thought to himself and prepared to walk out of the valley to take a look. But in the next moment, he suddenly frowned as he sensed that there was someone behind Chun Wuching,